In Elysian, guys are the main characters. What I mean is, it's a city made up of only men. The girls come from different dimensions just for marriage. On Earth, couples wait until after the wedding to spend their first night together. But in Elysian, they do it the other way around, spending the night before the wedding. And, the next day, their magic combines or something, proving they're meant to be. In Elysian, girls can have a bunch of hubbies. Apparently our main character is getting married tomorrow, and right this second, two dudes are duking it out, trying to claim her as their own. But let me take you back to how it started. She was strolling towards the university library to study for her finals. Just then, everything went black. When she finally came to, she realized she was no longer in the library. Nope, she was in some place that gave off major prison vibes. Meanwhile, there are these two dudes going at each other like there's no tomorrow, hurling insults left and right. Then, out of the blue, they both turn to her and ask for her take on the whole mess. Talk about being caught in the middle. Poor girl, she's just trying to figure out where she is. As she finds herself in this unfamiliar place, she notices the chatter around her is in a language she can't decipher. Looking out, it dawns on her that this definitely isn't Korea. Suddenly, her gaze lands on a carriage that's come to a halt nearby. But what really sends shivers down her spine is the sight of masked men observing them intently. Fear grips her as the realization sinks in that she's completely lost and has no idea where she's ended up. Suddenly, as she stands there, she catches sight of a guy eyeballing her from a balcony nearby. Before she can process that, another guy sidles up to her with some news. His boss is smitten with her and wants to have a chat. He even hands her a necklace, mentioning that his boss wants to be formally introduced to her. Deep down, she can't shake off the feeling that this whole situation seems strangely familiar. Just when we thought things couldn't get any crazier, she discovers she can actually float on air. Crazy, right? Anyway, this dude motions for her to follow him, and as they're walking, she spots another guy without a mask. Just then, the balcony guy grabs her arm and insists she's his because he saw her first. But then, the other guy jumps in, saying his butler actually spotted her before anyone else. The first guy steps in, telling everyone to ignore whoever made choices before. Then, the guy wearing the mask decides to reveal his face and questions the other guy about his claim. According to him, the lady actually made eye contact with him first and even gave him a smile. This causes the second guy to retaliate by mocking the first guy, calling him an immature peanut. So, after some debating, they finally turn to her and ask who she's going to go with. No time for second guessing, they say. So, she makes her choice. She picks one of the guys. Later on, the guy she picks asks her name, and she tells him it's Yoo In-ah. Then, he starts unzipping her jacket and his own shirt, promising she won't regret picking him, no matter what. He casually asks her if she's had any experience with guys before, and without waiting for an answer, he leans in for a kiss. Then, he reassures her, saying she doesn't have to stress about it because in his world, Elysian, a woman's experience level doesn't matter. He'll just assume she's a total beginner and handle things smoothly from there. As things get steamy between them, she can't help but think how amazing it feels. Seriously, no one has ever treated her this nicely before, and dang, he's good at what he does. Later on, the guy's butler asks him if he thinks she's the right choice for a bride. He replies that he knew she was the one from the moment he laid eyes on her, but it would be a shame if it all ended up as just a business deal. He's planning to marry Estra, so he asks the butler to take good care of her. Later that day, in his room, the butler checks in on him and asks if his first Manhwa negotiation went well. The guy admits he was totally into it and got carried away, couldn't help himself. The butler nods, saying he knew it would go down like that. Seems like he's got a knack for attracting a lot of Manhwa easily. The next day rolls around, and the guy gently dries Yoo In-ah off with a towel. After a bit, she suddenly snaps awake, realizing she must have dozed off at some point. Just then, there's a knock on the door, and in walks the butler. He asks her if she had a good night's sleep and mentions that the master headed out early for work at the crack of dawn. Then, he hands her a fancy pair of slippers and some clothes. So, the butler starts explaining that in Elysian, they've got this place where they teach people how to live, kind of like a school. He mentions that the outfit he's giving her is called the Diverta uniform. Apparently, she can also rock some casual shoes with it. But when she takes a look at the clothes, she's like, "Isn't this just a swimsuit?" The butler responds, saying that since today is like attendance day or something, she's gotta sport the outfit they've given her. Yoo In-ah's thinking to herself that she's never even worn a bikini before, so how's she supposed to pull off this outfit? The butler notices she's struggling and offers to call someone to help her get dressed, but she quickly declines, saying she's got it covered. He agrees to give her some space and heads out to get her meal ready while she shoves him gently out the door. After a little while, she emerges from her room, rocking the outfit and looking gorgeous. She heads over to the dining table, ready to chow down. As she digs in, she's blown away by how tasty the food is. Meanwhile, the butler figures he might as well fill her in on today's agenda while she's munching away. He rattles off the long list of things she's got lined up, and she's thinking to herself that she's gonna need some serious antacids after all this. The butler decides to check in with her to see if she's got any burning questions. She brings up something that's been bugging her. Yesterday, she was positive she couldn't understand their language, so how come she's getting everything he's saying now? He explains that she's got this pendant called a locus. Apparently, it's got some translation magic woven into it, so whoever's wearing it gets an automatic language translator. He suggests it might be easier for her to learn the language fast because using the Madogu pendant all the time could tire her out mentally. Just then, a boy pops in and announces that the carriage outside is good to go. But get this, it's not your average carriage with a horse. Nope, it runs on some kind of magic stone. And it's so fast that they'll reach Diverta in, like, no time at all. Yoo In-ah finally makes it to Diverta, the educational spot in Elysian, and man, it's huge. Inside the classroom, this lady named Julia introduces herself as the go-to for sexual education. She's all about teaching everyone how to master the art of mana bargaining and scoring pleasure from it. Oh, and she's big on making sure they know how to keep themselves safe too. Julia gives props to everyone for rocking their uniforms, explaining that these outfits help with their body's circulation or something. Okay, so here's the deal with Elysian men, they've got two kinds of mana. There's intra, which is like a steady power source, and then there's extra, which is more of an explosive, unpredictable type of mana. Now, extra can be a bit tricky to handle. But get this, women have this cool ability to actually convert extra into their own intra mana. Pretty neat, huh? Anyway, to keep everything in check, there's gotta be some kind of mana negotiation going on between men and women. It's just how things roll in Elysian. It turns out, all these meetings with sponsors are like, thanks to Elysian's blessings or something. Yu's thinking to herself that elven guy claimed to be her sponsor, and he seemed pretty nice. But she wonders if other women are in the same boat as her. Then, Julia pipes up, asking if anyone hasn't had a mana negotiation since arriving here. Everyone stays quiet. Julia explains that this whole mana negotiation thing is like an everyday deal around here. Then, she points out that their first task is to each receive a man's extra just once and then return. It doesn't matter who it is, they've all gotta do it. Simple as that. Once the mind-blowing sex ed session wraps up, Yu's on to her next class, Beginner's Social Education. The teacher figures they've got tons of questions about how Elysian all began. Time to get those answers. In the land of Elysian, people were bestowed with blessings from the stars. Rather than being naturally gifted with powerful mana, they were born as males. This unique situation led Elysian to develop a magical method to bring women from other worlds into their realm. Every 3 years, there's this ritual where the women picked by the stars get called over. That's how they all ended up here. Then, this lady raises her hand and wants to know why they were chosen. She explains how she's got a big family to look after, 6 people in total, but sadly, she's the one holding everything together now. Her grandma, grandpa, and little brothers have all lost their main support. The teacher expresses sympathy for what happened and admits that as a teacher, the only explanation she can offer is that everything here happens because it's the will of Elysian. She shares that when she first arrived on this star, she was just as troubled as everyone else. But with time, she came to accept the purpose of the star, and now, she can't even remember her name from her past life. She reassures everyone that their current situations will eventually make sense and become the reason why they ended up in Elysian. After the class, Yoo's thinking to herself, like, is there even a reason why she ended up here? She's not buying into it, but hey, she figures she'll stick around for a while longer to get the hang of this whole new world. She's wondering if her memories are gonna start fading away. Is this really all just the will of the stars? So many questions. Yoo's strolling along, lost in her thoughts, when she accidentally bumps into another lady. She quickly says sorry, explaining she was totally zoned out. But instead of accepting the apology, the other lady shoots her this furious glare. Yoo's left wondering why she's getting such intense heat. Just then, the butler shows up and tells Yoo it's time to split. She tries to apologize again, but the lady just vanishes into thin air. As they're riding in the carriage, the butler asks Yoo if the lady she bumped into was her friend, the one from the dominant class, rocking the red uniform. Yoo suddenly notices that the lady was wearing a totally different colored uniform and some fancy jewelry that looked kinda old school. She starts wondering if she should have begged for forgiveness back there. Man, she really hopes that lady doesn't show up at her place later. In Elysian, they've got this whole class system going on. At the top are the reed and dominant classes. Yoo's sponsor, Elvin, is part of that crew. But the real big shots in society are the military folks, and their color is red. You can spot them a mile away because they're always decked out in red gear. There are usually like 5 or more women matched up with the guys from this class, and they're proudly strutting their stuff in their red outfits. At the bottom are the slaves, no surprise there. Above them is the common class, which is basically like 90% of the population, including you. Then you've got the middler class, which is like kinda rich commoners. And above them is the scalar class, rocking the color blue. They're a step up, for sure. That's the basic breakdown of how things roll in Elysian. These kids are doing some cleaning gig over at Diverta, this upscale joint. But things take a dark turn when the butler spills the beans, revealing that this place deals in selling young boys. Yoo's taken aback and asks if she's supposed to pick one out. Without skipping a beat, the butler confirms, saying he'll school her on how to choose the cream of the crop. As they walk, he explains the harsh reality: these young boys are like commodities, traded as they age. That's why there's a mix of ages, one young, one older, to ensure immediate productivity. Yoo notices 2 boys with sorrowful expressions and offers them a ray of hope by asking if they'd like to join her. Inside the carriage, Yoo finds herself surrounded by snoozing boys, their soft snores filling the air. Curious, she turns to the butler and asks if they let the boys go once they're grown men. With a nod, he confirms. Yoo remarks on the unusual setup of keeping them all together, but she quickly adds a touch of her own background, where slavery's long been history, emphasizing her stance on the matter. Yoo shares her wish that the kids could catch a break from all the tough stuff they're going through. The butler responds, saying his boss would probably be on board with that sentiment too. Later, when they reach Ivan's place, Yoo checks with the butler about freshening up. He mentions that the boss wants everyone to use the bathroom together today, as ordered. He offers to fetch some clothes, but she freaks out, insisting she'll handle the shower solo. Walking away, she's silently losing it, wondering if anyone here even feels a shred of shame. She just needs a quick rinse to clear her head. Suddenly, her assignment pops into mind, and she realizes there's still work to be done amidst all this chaos. But seriously, does she really have to shower in the bathroom? Wouldn't the bedroom work just fine? Just as she's mulling this over, Ivan shows up out of nowhere, asking if she's headed for a shower. He suggests they go together since they're both headed that way. She's mortified at the idea and quickly insists she can handle it solo. The thought of showering with him makes her blush like crazy. He throws out there, "Do you have something against showering with me?" She's quick to clarify that it's not about that at all. Then he suggests they just keep it simple, no need for any emotional stuff or bargaining. He assures her he won't try anything, and she's surprised but goes along with it. It's kind of a relief that he's not pushing for anything more. To use shock, it turns out to be a jacuzzi, totally not what she expected. He checks in, asking if she's feeling uneasy, but she's all good with it. Then he's like, "How's the temperature? And the scent?" She gives the thumbs up, saying it's all just right for her. He brings up how it's her first day at Diverta and wonders if she ran into any trouble. She shakes her head, saying she's just picking up some new stuff. Then he's like, "Did you get stuck with a tough task?" He notices she hasn't been herself lately and gets a bit worried. But she assures him she's hanging in there. Then out of the blue, he gives her a hug and tells her that if she ever feels overwhelmed in this Elysian life, he's got her back as her sponsor and will help her adjust. He keeps the questions coming, asking if she's had any food, how her first class went, and even what's been on her mind while he's been at work. He's all ears, wanting to hear her story. She admits something that might sound a bit weird. She feels like her old world memories are slipping away bit by bit. That's why she was able to dive into today fully, feeling like she belongs here. Wherever she goes, she can't help but wonder about him, what he's up to, who he's hanging out with. She's even thinking if he'll be back in time for dinner. Ivan picks up on her vibes and asks if she wants to hang out with him. But she quickly shifts gears, saying she's got this assignment to deal with. Then, she kicks herself mentally for letting it slip. She didn't mean to spill the beans about her task. He wonders if he's distracting her from her assignment and suggests they head back if that's the case, since it's getting late. But she interrupts, grabbing him and saying no, the assignment is about receiving a manna. Then, out of the blue, she plants a kiss on him. He offers to help her bathe, and as he starts, she admits it's her first time doing this in water. He reassures her, saying she's in good hands. Later that night, as they're chilling on the bed, she suddenly remembers the guy in the cat mask she bumped into on day one. She asks if he's doing okay. He figures she's talking about that dude Aspelis and calls him a jerk. She nods, confirming. He gives her a squeeze and says she shouldn't waste her time wondering about him. According to him, he's just like any other guy, here today, gone tomorrow. Thinking back to her first day, she remembers why she didn't pick Aspelis. He came off as pretty aggressive, and she was straight up scared of him. And then, out of the blue, the dude starts tearing up. Right now, Ivan notices she's been restless in bed, tossing and turning. He suggests she try some warm cream tea if she can't sleep. As they head to the kitchen for the tea, she mentions how massive the mansion feels, admitting she's worried she might wander off and get lost. He brushes it off, saying it's not as confusing as she thinks. He gives her some pointers, like if she heads straight, she'll hit the dining room, and if she goes the other way, she'll find his study and office. If she wanders out of the hall, she'll stumble upon the garden with those fancy marble fountains. He keeps the directions coming, making sure she knows her way around. She wonders if there are any spots she should steer clear of, just in case. But he assures her there's nowhere off limits, the mansion is her home now too. While they sip their tea, Ivan mentions he planned to grab her a little something on his way back from work because he missed her. He hands her the present and tells her to go ahead and open it up. She's thrilled as she unwraps the present to find pastries inside. Ivan suggests they pair perfectly with the cream tea. As she munches on one, she comments on how the flavor is totally new to her. She decides she'll share some with Leo and Verta too. Ivan's curious and asks who they are, and she explains they're the names of the kids she rescued from the slave market. He tells her he thinks she's got this special gift of making people happy, basically saying she's awesome. Then, out of the blue, he playfully licks some cream off her face and gives her a kiss. Just a little silly moment between them, nothing too serious. The next morning, Yoo wakes up but notices Ivan isn't around. She recalls he usually heads out for work super early. So, she rings the bell, thinking to herself that she's got to make it to her diverta class today. Suddenly, the kids come in, carrying clothes and a tray, asking if she called for them. Looks like they're ready to help out. She checks in with the kids, wondering what's up with them. The older one explains that from now on, they're sticking close to her and helping out however they can. They ask what she needs, and she mentions she's got to head to the institution. So, she asks if they could get her uniform ready first. The younger kid volunteers to lend a hand with getting her dressed. Looks like they're ready to tag along and lend a hand wherever they can. Yoo bursts out laughing, saying she doubts the younger kid can manage to help her with her clothes. Meanwhile, the other kid hands her a present along with a letter that arrived for her. She's taken aback to find a necklace inside. She wonders who'd sent her something like that. Curious, she opens the letter and is surprised to see it's from Aspelis. She can't help but wonder why on earth he'd sent her a gift. Yoo gazes at the necklace, lost in thought. The older kid interrupts, asking if she's gonna wear it. She nods and tosses the necklace to Leo, instructing Verta to quickly tie up her ribbon, realizing she's running behind schedule. In a rush, Yoo hurries to her diverta class, sprinting because she's seriously late. She sneaks a peek through the classroom door, hoping she hasn't missed too much. The teacher points Yoo to a seat up front, while Miss Julie beckons her over to test something she's got in her hand. Yoo's curious about what it could be. Julie chuckles, teasing them all, wondering why everyone looks so concerned. Judging by their faces, it seems like quite a few of them were busy exchanging mana last night. Julie explains that the thing in her hand is a magic tool that will grade their assignment. She decides to have the latecomer, Yoo, hold it. Yoo takes the tool, but suddenly, it explodes. Out pops this weird pink figure, saying something about being brilliant. Julie's amazed, calling it incredible. It's a total surprise twist, leaving everyone stunned. Julie takes a look at Yoo's assignment and thinks she did an amazing job. She mentions that Yoo has earned a massive amount of mana for her efforts. Then, she asks the first student to come forward and show their work. After everyone has had their turn, Julie makes an announcement. She says that out of all the students who have ever done their first assignment, Yoo's brought in the most mana. The only other person who's achieved that is the student leader, Miss Felicia. It's a big deal and shows just how well you did on her assignment. Getting a good amount of mana is one thing, but what they do with it afterward is just as crucial. It's like their own little responsibility to figure out how to make the most of it. If they keep practicing and negotiating for mana, they'll get better at managing bigger loads of it. And hey, using mana smartly can really amp up their lifestyle. So, it's a good idea for everyone to buckle down and get serious about honing their mana negotiation skills. The more effort they put in now, the more it'll pay off down the road. As the class comes to an end, Julie starts heading towards the door, probably ready for a break. But surprise! She runs into Felicia right there at the door. Felicia explains she's got a little something to share with the beginners gang. She spills the beans that there's a big announcement for all the diverta students. And get this, a supervisor's planning to drop by their houses, totally unannounced. It's like a sneak attack. Here's the deal, if their sponsor pulls any of these moves, they've got to speak up and let the supervisor know, like, ASAP. First off, if the sponsor starts bugging them about mana negotiations when they're not interested, it's a no-go. Second, if they're ever on the receiving end of any kind of physical or verbal abuse, or if the sponsor's piling on way too much work, they've got to speak up. And lastly, If the sponsor's trying to meddle in their love life, preventing them from finding a new partner, that's a red flag too. It's important to watch out for each other and speak up if something's not right. To put an end to all the shady stuff that's been going on for ages, the student council's stepping up to lend a hand. As Yoo heads out of Diverta, she's thinking to herself that maybe she should have apologized when she bumped into Felicia earlier. Just one of those little things that nags at you afterwards. The next day rolls around, and suddenly, the boys wander into Yoo's bedroom. She's taken aback and asks what's going on. Leo holds out a bouquet of flowers, and yep, you guessed it, they're from Aspelis once more. Just then, Ivan strolls in. He spots the flowers and casually asks if they're from Aspelis. You can't shake the feeling that Ivan might not be too thrilled about it. It's one of those moments that leaves her wondering what's going to happen next. Ivan pipes up, mentioning that he can't really stop Aspelis if he's dead set on marrying her, but he wishes he had a heads up first, since he's her sponsor and all. Yoo's quick to shut down the marriage idea, saying there's no way she's tying the knot with someone she barely knows. She then asks Leo and Verta to handle all the presents for her. It's her way of dealing with the situation, keeping things simple. As they step out of the room, you can't help but comment to Ivan about how weird Elysian can be. I mean, seriously, how could he just toss out the idea of her marrying someone else like it's no big deal? She's happy right where she is, living with him. Ivan starts blushing like crazy and suggests they go for a walk. It's his way of changing the subject and getting some fresh air. Out in the open, they're enjoying a picnic together. Ivan surprises her with a gift, and when she opens it, she finds paints inside. He explains that they're made at Callion's public art studio, using rainbow-colored clams from Selbis Beach to create the pigment. The colors are vibrant and beautiful. Plus, once she finishes painting, they'll release this unique fragrance they're known for. It's like a two-in-one deal. Painting with these paints is not just about the colors, but also about the experience. Yoo's curious how Ivan knew she's into painting. He casually mentions that he knows pretty much everything about her. Plus, it just so happens to be the season for getting tools imported, so if she needs anything, she should just give him a shout. But then, he notices she's getting all teary-eyed. Yoo quickly apologizes and asks for a moment to herself. It's one of those moments where emotions catch up with her, and she just needs a sec to gather herself. As she reminisces about her past, even though it's all a bit fuzzy, she recalls feeling pretty lonely back on Earth. She remembers how badly she wanted to paint. Overcome with gratitude, she gives Ivan a big hug, thanking him. But then things take a bit of a tumble as she accidentally knocks him over. He's a bit confused about the whole situation, asking what kind of position they're in. She just shrugs and admits she's not really sure herself. Just one of those awkward moments, Yoo comments on how lovely the weather is today, mentioning that it's so warm that even if Ivan were to take his clothes off, she doubts he'd feel cold. Ivan chuckles and admits that he's usually the type to keep his clothes on, but he's willing to make an exception. Just a little playful banter between them on this beautiful day. Days later, while Yoo is busy painting, the butler comes in and drops a bombshell. There's some kind of situation going on. Curious, Yoo heads downstairs to check it out. To her surprise, she finds Aspelis waiting for her. He claims he's finally tracked her down and announces that it's inspection time. He politely asks for her cooperation, but inwardly, you can't help but wonder if he's really serious about seeking her out. It's a bit unexpected, to say the least. Yoo's puzzled and asks the butler why Aspelis is showing up out of the blue like this. The butler explains that there's been some buzz about sponsors not playing fair, so now the whole place is under inspection. He invites Aspelis in and offers to lead him to the living room on the first floor. Meanwhile, Aspelis can't seem to take his eyes off Yoo. The butler steps in and reminds him that it's not cool to stare at someone, especially when you're meeting them for the first time. Just a little reminder about manners, The Arterier family is totally on board with this nationwide investigation that's going down. They're crossing their fingers that it'll all get sorted out real quick so they can move on. Meanwhile, the lady of the house is feeling a bit worn out today. Just one of those days where she could use a little extra rest. As Aspelis and Yoo settle into their seats, he suggests that it might be a good idea if everyone else, including the lady and the kids, leaves the room for a bit. Once they've cleared out, he turns to Yoo and strikes up a conversation. He casually asks her what her name is, and she introduces herself, mentioning that she's being sponsored by Ivan Arterier. Aspelis nods understandingly and remarks that it's totally fine, even if she doesn't want to mention that jerk's name. Just a laid-back start to their chat. Aspelis fires off a bunch of questions at Yoo, asking about her age, where she's from, what she likes to do for fun, and any quirks or stuff she's into. You can't help but wonder if she really has to spill all those details. She keeps it simple, saying she's 21 and her hobby is painting. Thanks to Ivan setting up a sweet hobby room for her, she spends a lot of time painting there. Aspelis interrupts, asking if she has any idea how long he's been searching for her. It's a bit of a surprise twist in their conversation. As their conversation continues, Aspelis throws another question her way, asking if she knows how long it took him to become the inspector for this area. But despite his new role, he's still curious about Ivan and wants to hear all about him from Yoo's perspective. Yoo's a bit taken aback and asks if he didn't come here for an inspection after all. To her surprise, Aspelis confirms that he did, but he also came with the intention of rescuing her from that jerk Ivan's grasp. Aspelis dives straight into the tough questions, asking why you didn't pick him over Ivan. He wonders if she dislikes him that much and what makes Ivan better. Was she not happy with him? Yoo apologizes and admits that she can't stand violent guys. Basically, what she's saying is that she's not into him because he's got a violent streak. It's a pretty straightforward response from her. Yoo mentions that Ivan has never even raised his voice around her like that. Aspelis's response is to suggest that he can simply speak more softly if that's the issue. But then he starts getting emotional and tears up. Yoo's surprised and asks why he's crying. Aspelis moves closer to her, referring to her affectionately as his love and angel. It's quite a heartfelt moment, with emotions running high. Aspelis opens up about how much he's thought about her since that day she left. He gently takes her hand and gives it a kiss, admitting that ever since their eyes met, he can't get her out of his mind. He mentions that he's not like Ivan and he's still figuring out how to navigate relationships with women. Aspelis expresses his heartfelt desire for his first time to be with her. He wants her to be the one to experience his magic for the first time. Yoo hesitates, mentioning that she's currently dating Ivan. But Aspelis seems to think she's missing the point of why he came for the inspection in the first place. He's pinning her down on the couch and telling her that restricting the free use of magic, even if the sponsor wants it, is totally wrong and shows he's misusing his power. He's undressing and explaining that they're not in her usual world anymore, but in Elysian. Here, she can do whatever she pleases. He wants her to call him Aspel. Yoo warns him that she'll scream if he gets too rough, and he agrees. So, he leads her over to the bed. He tells her he's really into her and starts giving her kisses. After they finish, Aspel checks in with her, asking if everything was okay and if he was awkward. He apologizes, but she reassures him that she didn't hate it, even though it was a bit awkward. However, she admits that it's scary when he holds her wrist firmly, and she doesn't want him to do anything like that again without asking her first. Aspel apologizes, and she assures him it's all right as long as he understands. Then, he checks if she's in pain. In her mind, she thinks he's good-looking, way different from anyone she knew back in her world. She's starting to believe she's figured out one of the rules of this new place they're in. Here, no matter how important guys are, they all hope to be picked by girls from other dimensions. That's why girls can have lots of boyfriends and even marry more than one guy without any hassle. Even if Evian doesn't get mad, this place is totally a free-for-all where she can do whatever she feels like. Yoo takes off her clothes and asks Aspel why he's not making a move. She tells him to please kiss her. When he hesitates, she insists he needs to do it now or never. Finally, he starts getting intimate with her. She can really feel it, the special manna of Elysian called Estra. Once they're done, Aspel checks in with Yoo, wondering if he was terrible at it since it was his first time. He's concerned he might not have made her happy enough. Yoo hasn't said a single word since it ended. Deep down, she knows it's because she got too much manna, but she tells him she's just tired and wants to rest. Turning away, she finds it odd that she's able to sense the manna. After Aspel leaves the mansion, the door to the drawing room swings open. The butler comes in and tells Yoo that it's smart to talk with lots of guys, but Aspel might not be the best pick. Yoo thinks to herself that the butler's got a point. She even notices that even the stones seem to be disagreeing with each other for some reason. Yoo wonders if Evian would be mad, so she asks the butler. He explains that the political ties between the Artrians and the Cascals aren't too bad, so there's no real reason for the boss to be upset. But before he can finish, Yoo's already dozed off. He notices she looks really worn out anyway. Later that day, Yoo hops in the bath, and Leo pitches in to help her get dressed. After a bit, Ivan walks in and sees she's occupied. He figures he'll hang out on the side and let her take her time. But Yoo tells the kids to clear out instead. Ivan says it's cool for him to help dry her hair before shooing the kids away. Yoo takes the chance to ask him about his connection with Aspel. He mentions that Aspel came over for an inspection earlier. When she asks if it's about the sponsor investigation, Ivan doesn't think so. He explains that they've got enough people to send someone higher up to handle that kind of thing. If Aspel came over to investigate, there's gotta be a reason behind it, thinks Yoo. She mentions that he came to find her, and Ivan wonders if he did something wrong to her. Yoo explains they just did manna negotiation. Ivan drops to his knees right away. Concerned, she checks if he's okay and apologizes for making him worry. He gently holds her hands and tells her not to worry, there's no need to say sorry because she didn't do anything wrong. Then, he asks her if she really wanted to do the manna negotiation. Yoo nods and confirms that she did. Ivan nods back, saying it's all right. But he wants to make sure she knows that no matter what happens down the road, she should always refuse any manna negotiation she doesn't feel comfortable with. As her sponsor, Ivan's job is to make sure she's free to do whatever she likes while also keeping her safe. Seeing Yoo with a sad face, he wonders why she's feeling down. Then, he suggests they grab some snacks together, hoping to cheer her up. While they munch on snacks, Ivan checks in with Yoo, asking if Aspel did anything else to her, like being rough or causing her pain. Yoo replies with a shrug, saying nothing much happened besides that. Then, she lets out a big yawn, wondering why she's suddenly so sleepy. Ivan wonders if she missed her afternoon nap or if she's feeling unwell somewhere. But before he can finish his sentence, she's already drifted off to sleep. After a bit, Yoo opens her eyes and mentions she thinks she can sense the magic. Ivan looks puzzled and asks what she means, saying it's strange she got it from that jerk Aspel of all people. He adds that if she really can feel the magic, it's something to celebrate. He suggests she takes it easy for the rest of the day and can go to Diverda later to get tested. The next day, Yoo heads to Diverda. Meanwhile, as soon as Ivan leaves for work, the butler rushes to Aspel's office. Yoo later hears that the butler punched Aspel in the face. And surprise, she discovers she can use magic. Now that she can use magic, Yoo finds it easy to make small things float. It'll definitely make painting a breeze. Excited to test her powers, she starts using magic on various items around her. But before she knows it, everything falls to the ground. Perplexed, she asks what's going on. Leo and Verta explain that Aspel has sent over a bunch of presents today. They show her the letter to prove it. After reading the letter, Yoo tries her magic again, this time testing out the jewelry that was sent. Just then, Ivan walks in and notices what she's doing. He asks if that's her taste. Ivan suggests they get the butler to go to the shopping district right away so they can buy whatever she wants. Yoo agrees, saying it's all good. Yoo explains it's because she's never worn anything like the jewelry before. Curious, she asks Ivan what's on his mind. He replies that he just wanted to see her. After all, doesn't he need any other reason to visit his sweetheart? Pulling her close, he adds that it makes him happy to be with her. Smiling, Yoo leans in and kisses him. As they're about to get busy on the bed, Yoo notices a mark on Ivan's arm and asks what happened. He brushes it off, saying it's nothing major. Curious, she asks if he ran into Aspel today. Ivan admits they had a bit of a scuffle but assures her nobody got seriously hurt. Concerned, she asks how badly he's injured, and he shows her. He gives her a hug and reassures her that the injury isn't serious, it just looks bad because of his training. He explains that he had to be on his feet all day. He tells her not to worry, mentioning he's had worse injuries on his body during expeditions before. Then, he asks if they can turn off the light and get busy, but she tells him she's not up for jokes at the moment. He tells her that his kind of injury is pretty normal, it might take some time, but it'll heal up fine without leaving a mark. Being a soldier means you can't be afraid of getting hurt, he explains. But she counters, saying it could have been sorted out without a fight. He agrees, mentioning his relationship with Aspelis was never great from the start. He reflects on the past, remembering all the times they've gotten into physical fights over small stuff. He didn't want to stress her out like this, it's all his fault. He believes she's a woman worth dedicating his whole life to. Whether it's fighting, dying, or getting hurt, none of it matters to him if it's for her. He pleads with her not to reject his confession of love. Later that evening, Ivan snoozes peacefully while Yoo watches him. She glances at the gifts and decides she's had enough. Determined, she storms out of the room. The butler notices and asks where she's off to. Yoo replies that she's just stepping out for a bit and tells him not to follow her. Leo and Verta grab onto Yoo, trying to prevent her from leaving. Leo asks if she realizes what time it is and where she's off to. Yoo insists she's heading to find Aspelis's house. She's convinced he's going to hurt Ivan, and she can't let that slide. She instructs the kids to get the carriage ready for her. Yoo finally arrives at Aspel's house, her eyes widening at the sight of his extravagant mansion. She can't help but wonder how he managed to afford such a lavish place, especially if he's just 2 ranks below Ivan. Before she can ponder further, Aspel's butler steps out, looking curious. He politely asks Yoo who she is and why she's showing up at this late hour without any prior notice. Yoo explains she's here to see Aspel, but the butler clarifies if she means Master Aspelis. Politely, he asks which family she belongs to and what her relationship is with Aspelis. He mentions he can't let unknown people into the Castle mansion. Yoo reassures him she's not planning to go inside, she's perfectly fine chatting with him outside. The butler insists Yoo should leave, and Verta grabs her hand, urging her to go. Yoo hesitates, feeling torn, but they start to leave. Suddenly, another butler rushes out, telling them to wait. He reveals that the Lord instructed them to bring the guest inside. Then, he whispers something to the first butler, looking worried, like he might have made a mistake. They're given permission to enter, and as they step inside, Yoo rushes towards Aspel, eager to talk to him. But when she grabs his shoulder, she's shocked to find an older man who looks exactly like Aspel. Confused, she asks him who he is. The man responds that's what he's supposed to ask her. He then invites her to take a seat. As they sit down, Yoo apologizes for her mistake, admitting that when she saw him from behind, she thought he was Aspelis. She realizes now she made a big blunder. The man responds, saying that even if their belle is kind, he can't imagine him being friends with someone as impulsive and lowly as her. He adds that on top of everything, she didn't even bother to make an appointment before coming to see Belle. He wonders if she thinks it's just that easy to meet him. He's curious where she saw him and got so infatuated that she felt the need to come to their house. But he emphasizes that their Belle deserves better treatment. Suddenly, Aspel comes out, addressing the man as his father. He wonders why Yoo is at their house with his dad. Yoo is taken aback, realizing that the man she's been talking to is Aspel's father. Yoo's been searching for Aspel, and when she finally finds him, he blushes and asks if she's really been looking for him. She admits she has, but feels like she should just leave since she came without telling him first and might be bothering him. But then, he takes her hand and tells her she's not bothering him at all. In fact, he's really happy she came. Aspel wonders aloud why they have to tell each other before coming over. He asks if his father said something to make her feel like she needed to let them know beforehand. His father hesitates and admits that he thought she might just be bothering Aspel. Aspel insists that there's no chance Yoo In-ah would be like that. He's curious about what his father said to upset her. Yoo explains that she actually came because she has something important to tell him. Aspel apologizes for making her wait and suggests they go to his room to talk in private. In his room, Yoo mentions how long Aspel is taking just to change his clothes, even though he didn't look messy to begin with. She wonders why he feels the need to change. It's not a big deal to her. She feels a bit embarrassed about mentioning it. Aspel finally emerges and apologizes for keeping her waiting. She asks if he's going somewhere since he's dressed differently, but he assures her that he's just wearing his usual clothes. Aspel asks Yoo what she wants to talk about. She suddenly grabs his cheek and turns his face, surprising him. He asks what she's doing, and she explains that she's checking to make sure he didn't hurt his face. Then, she tells him to take his clothes off. Aspel sulks a bit but reluctantly starts taking off his shirt. Yoo is surprised to see bandages on Aspel's body. She came because she was upset that Evian got hurt, but now she's wondering why Aspel is injured too. Tears start welling up in her eyes, and Aspel, confused, asks her why she's crying and if he did something wrong. Yoo explains that over the past 3 weeks, she's received 20 presents from him. Yoo has realized that getting so many gifts from Aspel without any special reason feels overwhelming. Aspel asks if she's saying she doesn't like his gifts, and she explains that she doesn't really need those kinds of presents, and they just end up feeling like a burden to her. Yoo tells Aspel that if those presents were meant as apologies, he can stop giving them now. Aspel admits there wasn't any special meaning behind the gifts, he just didn't expect her to feel burdened by them. Yoo explains that's why she's bringing it up now, there's nothing romantic going on between them either. Yoo tells Aspel that he shouldn't send her any more presents and should just forget about her. She feels like she's said everything she needed to, so she's going to leave now. As she walks out of the room, she mutters to herself that she doesn't want the two of them to get hurt because of her. Aspel rushes out of the room, calling Yoo's name loudly. He begs her to wait, then drops to his knees in front of her. She protests, saying he shouldn't do that. But he pleads with her, asking if she can at least accept the presents. He explains that he thought giving her letters and gifts were the only things he could do without making her feel overwhelmed. Aspel understands that he can't approach her after hurting Evian, and he knows she won't become his girlfriend either, but he just wants some kind of physical closeness between them. Yoo questions if he'll truly be content with just that, but she admits she won't be satisfied with only that. Then, she moves closer to him and kisses him. Days later, on Aspel's bed, he suggests to Yoo that she can sleep over, but she declines, saying she can't. Aspel insists, mentioning that Evian is working late, so it won't be a problem. He pleads with her to stay, promising to take her back home tomorrow. Yoo questions how he knows Evian is working late, and Aspel explains that there's a visitor from Carline coming soon, so the entire unit is likely on high alert. Aspel tells Yoo that they're more than just friends now, so they can drop the formalities. He kisses her, and she jokingly says she can't handle 2 kisses in one day. Aspel understands and reassures her that he's just going to hold her hand. The next day, Yoo munches on snacks and thinks to herself that the spices here are stronger than the ones in Evian's food. She tells Aspel to stop staring at her because it's making her nervous. Then, she asks about his father. Aspel reassures her not to worry about him, explaining that his dad tends to pry into things, and if he found out they were dating, he'd be all over them. Aspel reassures you that he'll deal with his dad in his own way. Yoo wonders if Aspel's father is against their relationship, and Aspel says he doesn't think so. He mentions that he already mentioned this yesterday, but he'd like it if she could speak more comfortably with him. He suggests she can call him by any name she wants, like a nickname, since they're dating now. Yoo asks if it means that Aspel will be hers only now, and he confidently stands up, saying, of course. He assures her that he wouldn't even consider seeing other women. Yoo then suggests that starting next week, they should go on dates every week. However, she mentions that she can't see him on weekends because it's the day of the Moors. Aspel understands that Yoo needs to spend time with Evian, but he points out that it means they can see each other for the other 6 days of the week, which he thinks is great. Later, Yoo heads to her carriage, and Aspel tells her to take care of herself as he kisses her hand. Inside the carriage, Yoo wonders what she's gotten herself into. She's now dating Aspelus. Yoo thinks to herself that this must be a dream and it'll all vanish when she wakes up. The next day, Evian talks to Yoo about the planned schedule of seeing Aspel. She asks him how he knows all this, and he explains that this morning, Aspel came into his office and made a big deal about it. Yoo then asks if he's upset that she's dating Aspel. Evian reassures Yoo that she doesn't need his permission to date Aspel. He expresses his desire to become the best husband for her and promises not to meddle in her relationship with Aspel. Yoo is shocked to hear him mention being a husband, and Evian explains that he wants to be her husband since the moment they met. Evian kneels down and presents a ring, asking Yoo if she'll marry him. He explains that the centerpiece of the ring, which looks like the sun, represents her, and the stars surrounding it represent himself. He tells her that she's his son and asks if she'll be the center of the rest of his life. Evian assures Yoo that whatever decision she makes, he'll always be there for her. He promises to keep loving her just like he always has, to support her, and to take care of her every day. He asks her not to look sad, no matter what. Evian stands up and explains that as Yoo's supporter, it's his responsibility to show her a broader world. In Elysian, no one, whether a supporter, lover, or husband, can claim full ownership of a woman's heart. He admits that asking for her hand in marriage might have been greedy of him. He tells her to please put the ring on if her heart tells her to do so. Evian feels it's time to introduce Yoo to other men. Before she knows it, everything is arranged in the blink of an eye. The next day, Yoo has a meeting with a guy named Sirius. In Elysian, the social scene encourages women to interact with more men, so Yoo meets people through introductions by Evian. But it's not an easy process for her. Yoo is having a nightmare about guys asking for her hand in marriage. Suddenly, Aspel holds her from behind and reassures her that it's him. He asks if she's okay and if she had a bad dream. Yoo hugs him tightly and tells him he's the best. Inside, she realizes that she's met so many guys that now she's even dreaming about meeting them. Aspel notices that Yoo looks tired lately and asks if she's sure she's not overworking herself. He suggests that if she doesn't want to do something, she should just say no, or he could talk to Evian about it. Yoo reassures him that she's fine and tells him to calm down. He hugs her, commenting on how soft she feels. She teases him back, saying he's the opposite, and he playfully flops her onto the bed. Yoo finds herself pondering what she would have done back on Earth, but her memories from Elysian are starting to dominate her thoughts. Should she be concerned? Her worries don't last long, though, because that man suddenly enters her life. Yoo and Evian sit together at the dinner table. Evian hopes the meal is to her liking and asks if she had a good night's rest. Yoo looks slightly tired but smiles and says she rested well. Evian mentions that Lieutenant Arnaud from before wants to meet with her again and keeps asking for it. But the person Evian wants to introduce today isn't Lieutenant Arnaud. Yoo asks who it is, and Evian explains that his name is Lieutenant Colonel Samuel Dietrich Samuel. He's from the same class as Evian, the dominant class, and they've known each other since their military academy years. Evian asks Yoo if she'd like to meet him, and she agrees to meet him. Later that evening, Yoo sits on the bed with Leo when she hears a knock on the door. Verta informs her that she has a visitor waiting downstairs. Yoo tells Verta she'll be there in a minute. As she heads downstairs, she thinks about Evian's proposal. She reminds herself not to overthink it and to simply follow her heart and do what feels right. As Yoo opens the door to the sitting room, she sees Samuel, who insists that she shouldn't stand and should come join him for a drink. Yoo declines, saying she doesn't drink. Samuel remarks that she's just like Evian, calling him a boring guy for not indulging in alcohol or narcotics. He suggests that she should take a sip, claiming that the more she drinks, the better it gets. Yoo insists she doesn't want to drink and suggests they have a conversation instead. Samuel responds by stating that his duty and purpose are to fight any opponent to win and conquer. He believes that Yoo is a woman suited for him. Then, he surprises her by asking her to engage in a mana exchange with him. Samuel thinks she doesn't like it. He wonders if it's because it happened too quickly. He calls the butler and asks if there's someone speaking against him. The butler stammers, and Samuel questions if he's disobeying his friend Ivan's orders. Yoo instructs the butler to carry out Samuel's requests, but she politely asks Samuel to refrain from being rude to the butler. Samuel chuckles, teasingly referring to her as a bossy lady. Before they proceed with whatever he has in mind, he expresses his desire to impress her. With a confident grin, he then proceeds to remove his shirt, revealing his physique, which leaves you utterly astonished and speechless. He asks you what she's doing, and she flips the question back at him, curious about his actions. She admits she's never tried holding mana in her mouth before. Samuel wonders if Evian ever instructed her to do so, and Yoo shakes her head, saying Evian doesn't give orders like that. She fondly recalls how Evian always cares for her and speaks to her with kindness, which makes her feel warm inside. As Samuel presses her against the sofa, Yoo's anxiety rises as she notices the servants standing nearby. Samuel tries to calm her nerves, explaining that they're just manservants and won't interfere. Despite her worries, he leans in to kiss her. Yoo realizes that this is why he called all the servants in, to create privacy. Feeling uncomfortable, she asks him to stop, but he ignores her protests and persists with his actions, leaving her feeling even more uneasy. Yoo, feeling fed up with Samuel's arrogance, reaches for the bottle of alcohol nearby. With a sigh, she swings the bottle, using it to lightly tap Samuel's head. Samuel, caught off guard, demands to know who she thinks she is. Ignoring his question, Yoo turns the bottle, pretending to pour the alcohol onto his face. The servants watch wide-eyed, shocked by the scene unfolding before them. With a playful smirk, Yoo quips that she's just serving him a drink, adding a touch of humor to the tense moment. Yoo confronts Samuel, asking him how he likes being on the receiving end for once. He responds by calling her arrogant, but Yoo doesn't back down. She tells him she could say the same thing about him, listing off his rude behavior, stubbornness, and strange interests. Yoo then mentions his small-mindedness and asserts that someone like him doesn't belong in the House of Astrier. With determination, she orders him to leave immediately, using her magic to emphasize her point. The servants watch in surprise as Yoo takes a stand against Samuel's behavior. As Samuel falls to the ground, Yoo is shocked to see her magic actually working. In her thoughts, she realizes that she can use magic to defend herself. It's a moment of surprise and revelation for her. The butler inquires if Yoo just used magic, and she confirms, saying she's had the ability for a while. Samuel identifies it as telekinesis, explaining that it's a fundamental form of floating magic. He demonstrates his own magic, visibly upset. Samuel remarks that telekinesis isn't something they teach at Diverta, the quality of magic in Yoo's body is unique, it's at least 2 dominant classes. It's a surprising revelation for everyone present. He tells Yoo not to fool herself into thinking the manna is hers and warns her against being too confident. With a wave of his hand, he lifts her into the air using his magic. Samuel offers her a chance to acquire another type of dominant class manna, repeating his proposal. He insists that she should exchange manna with him. But Yoo stands her ground and firmly refuses, saying no to his offer. Samuel boasts about his past achievements, bragging that he was a prodigy with even more potential than Evian during their time at the academy. He proudly mentions owning a larger mansion than Evian. He tries to persuade Yoo that rejecting him would be a big mistake. Just then, Evian arrives, using his magic to confront Samuel. Evian admits he was about to slip away quietly to his room, but seeing the commotion, he had to step in to restore order. Evian reminds everyone that in Elysian, any violence against women results in immediate imprisonment, without exceptions. He emphasizes that threatening a civilian, especially by a military person, is unacceptable. Evian assures Samuel that he won't lose his livelihood, but his actions have consequences. Samuel breaks down in tears, calling Evian his friend. It's a tense and emotional moment for everyone involved. Evian threatens to kill Samuel on the spot and intensifies his use of magic. Yoo steps in, gently grabbing his hand and urging him to calm down. Evian embraces her, reassuring her that everything is okay now. He then orders Samuel to leave, and Samuel rushes out of the room. With the tension easing, Evian admits to Yoo that there's something he hasn't been able to tell her yet. Evian admits to Yoo that his indecisiveness has caused her pain, and he feels guilty for it. He even goes as far as to say he deserves punishment for his behavior. He reveals that he's about to embark on a deployment and won't be around for a while. But today's events have made him realize something important: he can't leave Yoo alone in the house. Worried about her safety, he suggests that if anything like today were to happen again while he's away, they should consider seeking refuge at the royal palace. Evian is confident that if it's the guy from the royal family, he will treat Yoo the way she deserves. At the royal palace, the prince comes across a letter from Yoo In-ah. It's a moment of curiosity and intrigue for him. While enjoying dinner at Aspel's mansion, he engages Yoo in a conversation about their next outing. He wants to take her somewhere different, a place they haven't visited with Evian. Aspel proposes a visit to a riding ranch, where they can try riding griffins and ocosauruses. Yoo expresses her excitement but admits she's never experienced anything like it before, adding to the anticipation of the upcoming adventure. As they chat about their upcoming visit to the riding ranch, Aspel reassures Yoo that he'll be her personal instructor, guiding her through everything she needs to know. He proudly mentions his expertise as the top rider among his friends. Before saying goodnight, he plants a kiss on her cheek. Reflecting on the evening, Yoo notices how Aspel appears more grown-up and at ease compared to their first meeting. It makes her wonder if she's experiencing a change in herself too. After dealing with the Samuel situation, Yoo notices that Aspel is putting in effort to be supportive. He doesn't bring up the incident, which she appreciates. When she arrives home, Evian greets her with a quick hug, holding her tightly. Worried about him, she asks if everything's okay. Evian assures her that he just needed a moment to hug her, finding comfort in her presence. In their bedroom, Yoo wonders why Evian isn't off to work like usual. Teasingly, she asks if he got the boot from his job, which makes him chuckle. Yoo mentions that he seemed a bit different yesterday, but Evian brushes it off, telling her not to fret. He expresses his enjoyment of their leisurely morning together. Evian even looks ahead to retirement, imagining plenty more relaxed moments like this with Yoo in the future. Yoo mentions that they usually do that on holidays anyway. Evian proposes they head to the art gallery later in the day. He's heard about an art exhibition showcasing works by numerous talented female artists, which piques Yoo's interest. Evian shares that he's been occupied with rigorous training exercises in preparation for his upcoming deployment. Additionally, he's had to make arrangements for visits from VIPs, including Carlion marshals, adding to his busy schedule. Evian reveals that he's from the noble Mykonvorf family of Carlion. As the Marshal of Carlion, Sir Kiazar Ilianis Mykonvorf requested to arrange a meeting with her on the day of the Morse festival. His Royal Highness responded by extending a personal invitation, indicating the importance of the occasion. With such a prestigious royal invitation, Yoo is granted access to the royal palace. Evian assures you that she'll always be welcome as a guest, no matter the reason or qualifications. He kindly offers to accompany her, emphasizing that she shouldn't hesitate to accept his company. A few days later, while Yoo and Evian are traveling in the carriage, Evian brings up Sir Kiazar's status. He explains that Sir Kiazar is the Marshal of Carlion, holding a high position in the first class, which is the most esteemed rank. Despite being part of the royal family, Sir Kiazar's background is shrouded in mystery. Unlike others in his class, his parentage is vague because he hatched from an unattended egg, adding an intriguing twist to his story. Regardless, Sir Kiazar's bloodline confirms his royal heritage, indicating that his parents belong to a high social class. Yoo remarks that despite the circumstances, he's still royalty. She questions if it's suitable for her to be dressed casually. Evian reassures her, saying it doesn't matter. Sir Kiazar is known for his modest preferences and strong moral character, so her attire will be just fine. Upon arriving at the palace, Evian points out that Sir Kiazar is lodged in the guest room of the West Wing. As they enter, they're greeted by a man who introduces himself as Sir Kiazar's secretary. Evian takes a moment to introduce himself to the secretary as well. The secretary then mentions that he's heard quite a bit about Evian and acknowledges his esteemed standing within the Confederation, showing familiarity with Evian's reputation. The secretary remarks on Yoo's straightforward outfit choice, and Evian clarifies that they're following the dress code, so it shouldn't pose any problems for their entry into the palace. He adds that their seats are already set up in the garden. Yoo can't help but feel a tad uneasy when she notices the secretary giving her a lingering glance as he walks away, making her feel a bit out of place. As they reach the garden, they spot Sir Kiazar. Yoo can't help but think to herself how strikingly handsome he is. She admits that when she heard royal family, she pictured someone older and heavier, but Sir Kiazar proves her wrong. He looks much younger than she expected. Evian notes that it's been quite some time since they last met face to face. 7 years is quite a stretch, especially for someone as young as Evian, he adds. Kiazar invites them to sit down and relax. Evian then introduces Yoo, mentioning that she's enrolled in Diverta classes this semester and has been getting to know Elysian quite well. Kiazar turns to Yoo and comments on how eventful her semester must have been. He assumes she's had quite a few engagements and partners keeping her busy. Evian turns to Yoo, asking if she wants to share. Yoo replies that for now, it's just him and Aspelis. Kiazar then wonders if it's only the two of them, to which Evian responds that although he introduced Yoo to people from esteemed families, neither side was keen on pursuing anything. Since it hasn't even been a year yet, he feels there's no need to rush into anything. Kiazar gazes at Yoo for a moment before nodding and saying, "Okay then, if it works out." Yoo takes a sip of her tea and finds it rather bitter. Evian suggests adding some syrup to make it more palatable. Kiazar then turns to Evian and inquires about when he plans to have the first mana exchange with Yoo. Evian responds that they should have a discussion about it and come to a decision together, as it's something they should mutually agree upon. As Evian excuses himself to give them privacy, Kiazar leans in closer to Yoo. He expresses his desire for her truthful thoughts about him, especially now that Evian is not around. Kiazar wants to know how she feels about the prospect of him being her husband. Kiazar admits that when he first heard about Yoo and decided to visit Lemislag, he envisioned himself becoming her husband right away. However, he now realizes that he may have overlooked how she feels about him, focusing solely on whether her appearance and personality matched his expectations. He asks her if she thinks he'd be a good match as her husband. Yoo thinks to herself that he's incredibly attractive, but she's surprised by how quickly he's making this decision. It seems a bit hasty to her. She shares with him that she's heard of his high social standing, yet he seems to be deciding on marriage with her just based on her appearance and personality. She's curious about what he thought of the other potential partners. He assures her that she's the only one he's interested in and came all the way to Lemmislake to meet her. She asks him if he really traveled all this way just to meet her, and he confirms it. She feels overwhelmed by the suddenness of it all and requests the chance to talk to Ivan about it first. He nods in agreement. After the meeting concludes, the secretary abruptly gestures for Yoo to leave, leaving her perplexed by his rudeness. She wanders through the palace, feeling disoriented as she tries to find her way out. Just as she starts to feel lost, Ivan appears behind her, surprising her with a warm hug. Feeling relieved, she expresses gratitude for his timely arrival, confessing that she thought she might never find her way out on her own. Ivan feels thankful that Yoo chose to be with him right from the start and that he was the one who found her when she was lost. He's expressing this gratitude now because he's been reflecting on his own selfishness lately, which has made him a bit anxious. He shares that Sir Kiazar has been someone he's looked up to since he was a kid, which adds to his feelings. Every boy in Elysian, including Ivan, saw Kiazar as the ultimate role model. With his striking looks, strength, fairness, and calm demeanor, Kiazar was someone they all looked up to. For Ivan, the thought of Yoo being with such an exceptional man made him a bit anxious. He confesses he feared she might start comparing him to Kiazar, thinking he's not as great. She assures him that won't occur, but he noticed she couldn't help but glance at Kiazar throughout the meeting. As they ride in the carriage, Ivan expresses his concern that Aspelis might be too young to look after her properly. He mentions that the man they met today is the only person he feels comfortable entrusting her care to. Yoo shares that the meeting went well, noting that the man was very formal and respectful toward Kiazar. Ivan explains how Kiazar has been his inspiration since he was a kid. He holds Yoo's hand and tells her that according to Elysian traditions, a husband should support his wife. He acknowledges that Kiazar could provide her with greater wealth and influence than he ever could. He wonders if she didn't learn anything at Diverta. He reassures her that even if she gets married, he'll always be by her side. He doesn't want her to feel pressured to choose between him and Kiazar, so she should follow her heart and do what makes her happy. At home, Leo and Verta help Yoo get ready. Today's the day she's supposed to exchange mana with Kiazar. When she meets him, she tells him straight up that just because they're exchanging mana doesn't mean she's agreeing to marry him. She's here to test him. As she starts to touch him, he interrupts and tells her to wait. He tells her that he's totally new to this whole mana exchanging thing, especially with a woman. Like, he's never done it before, so it's all brand new. Because of that, he's not really sure how it's gonna go down. So, he kinda apologizes in advance if things get a bit weird or clumsy. He wants her to know that he's trying his best, but he might mess up along the way. She takes off her jewelry and starts kissing him, and they begin exchanging mana. During the exchange, he asks her to call him Carl. After they finish, Yoo falls asleep while Carl just watches her. She wakes up, and they decide to do another mana exchange. But after a while, Yoo starts feeling sick and passes out. Carl freaks out and calls in the doctor, along with Aspel and Ivan. The doctor checks Yoo and thinks the reason she's feeling so sick is because of the powerful mana flowing through the royal blood. When a ton of mana rushes in, it's like, too much for most people, so it spills out everywhere, you know? But with Yoo, it's weird. Her body doesn't do that overflow thing. Carl's like, hey, does she just keep taking in more and more mana? And the doc's like, yep, that's exactly what's happening. He expresses amazement at the fact that despite only experiencing mana for a year, Yoo's body contains such a vast amount of it. Yoo privately reflects on the purity of Carl's mana compared to others, realizing that absorbing a large quantity of such pure mana could potentially have severe consequences compared to absorbing lesser quality mana. Carl inquires about the next steps, and the doctor regretfully admits that this situation is unprecedented. He confesses uncertainty about Yoo's body's ability to cope with the overwhelming manna. As someone reaches out and touches Yoo's head, she quietly wonders about their identity, pondering if it's Ivan, Aspel, or Carl. Several days later, Carl's secretary arrives with his marriage papers. Concerned, Carl asks about Yoo's condition. The secretary replies that she's still asleep. Internally, Carl reflects on the passing days, realizing it's been 3 days since you fell unconscious. He worries about her prolonged slumber and the uncertainty surrounding her awakening. They're discussing Yoo, who's still kinda new here, summoned less than a year back. She's being looked at as a potential bride for the Astrier family, which is a pretty big deal. People tend to see women as just, well, things with only a handful of words to define them. But Yoo stands out because she's got her own name, you know? It's like she's more than just a label, she's her own person. He's thinking about how Yoo is from a lower class and hasn't been in Elysian for too long. She's the kind of woman who fits his political views. At first, he thought of these arrangements as just part of his job. Then he remembers Ivan, the respectful guy who looked up to him. Now he gets why he hesitated to introduce Ivan to Yoo. He's totally into Yoo's body, it's all soft and sweet, and she smells amazing. Plus, her voice is like music to his ears, just like those pretty birds singing. He's starting to think he might be falling for her. Carl goes to check on Yoo in her room, but she's still out cold. She mumbles Ivan's name in her sleep, and it hits Carl right in the feels. He gently wipes away her tears, feeling totally lost when he's near her. A couple of days later, Yoo finally opens her eyes, and guess who's there? It's Ivan, right by her side. He asks her how she's feeling, and she's so overwhelmed with emotion that tears start streaming down her face. Yoo reaches out and gives him a big hug, telling him not to ever leave her alone. Ivan assures her that he'll stick by her through thick and thin. He promises to be her rock, no matter what life throws their way. He vows to support her and shower her with love, no matter where they go or what they face together. He asks Yoo how Carl treated her, and she's not exactly sure, but she felt pretty queasy afterward. However, she admits that she actually had a good time spending the night with him. Ivan's all like, hey, if you're happy, then I'm happy too. He tells her she's still not completely better, so she should just lie down for now and not push herself to sit up for too long. Yoo asks Ivan to cuddle up with her, so they both lie down together. While they're chilling, Ivan's like, hey, how old are you this year? Yoo tells him she's 21. Then she asks him, and he's like, I'm 30 now. Yoo's kinda surprised and remembers that Aspel mentioned he was 23. But then Ivan drops a bombshell, Carl is actually 109 years old. Yoo's totally shocked to hear that. Yoo's pretty surprised, saying, he didn't seem that old. Then Ivan explains it's all because of Carl's royal blood. That's why he's on a whole different timescale than regular folks. Yoo's like, should I start calling him Grandpa Carl then? But Ivan's like, nah, not really. He goes on to say that's exactly why he wanted Carl to take care of her. See, Carl can give her all sorts of cool stuff like money and fame, but what's even more awesome is that he'll always be around, even after he's gone. Carl's gonna have her back for ages to come, no matter what. Yoo pauses, processing Ivan's suggestion. After a brief silence, she calmly agrees, saying she'll marry Carl. Ivan, slightly surprised but supportive, acknowledges it as a wise decision. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Yoo adds that she also wants to marry Ivan. Ivan is taken aback by her unexpected declaration. Yoo proposes that they wait until he returns safely from his deployment before tying the knot. They share a warm embrace, on the verge of a kiss, when suddenly Carl enters the room, discreetly interrupting their moment. Yoo invites Carl to come over and join them, saying she wants to snuggle up with both of them. Carl nods and climbs onto the bed, and together they all cuddle Yoo, wrapping her up in their warmth. In Diverda, Yoo excitedly shares the news with her friends that she's getting married. They're all surprised and confused, asking if she's talking about two different guys because they always thought she was the quiet type. Felicia just stands off to the side, quietly staring at Yoo. Her friends encourage Yoo to keep talking and explain. Yoo pops the question to her friends, wondering if she can crash at the Diverta dormitory for a little while. They're all pretty surprised by her request, not expecting it at all. Later on, when Yoo gets back home, she's greeted by an unexpected sight. Ivan's already there, kicking back with a book in hand. Curious, she strolls over and asks what he's reading. He looks up with a smile and tells her all about this bird called alabastro that's in the book. He explains that the bird's feathers have this super rare blue stuff on them, and they use the tiniest feathers to make really pretty accessories. He asks if she wants one. Yoo's like, that bird sounds kinda scary. So, he starts telling her about another animal called Dolorosa. Yoo wonders why he's suddenly showing her all this stuff, since she's never seen them at the market before. But he keeps on chatting about the animals anyway. Yoo interrupts him, asking what's up with all this. He explains that when he leaves for his deployment, he'll be gone for a few months, so he wants to make sure she's got some cool stuff to keep her company while he's away. After he takes down the monsters, he plans to return with some trophies as gifts for her from his deployment. Days later, Yoo pays a visit to Aspel to break the news of her upcoming marriage. Initially taken aback, Aspel's curiosity kicks in. He asks, who's the lucky guy? Yoo reveals it's a man named Kiazar. Aspel's demeanor instantly relaxes, responding with a nonchalant, "Oh, if it's with Kiazar, then it's no problem." After they wrap up dealing with a flying critter, Yoo casually asks Aspel if he knows Kiazar pretty well. He shrugs and says he's heard some stories about Kiazar from Lemislag, but he was only a kid, like 7 years old, at the time. Aspel admits he was too young back then to really support her. And now, Ivan's about to head off for his deployment. Yoo meets up with Carl, also known as Kiazar. He's like, "Hey, you wanna come with me to Carlion?" But she shakes her head and says she'd rather not. Carl explains that he ended up staying away from home longer than he planned because she got sick, so he had to head back to the Carlion Palace. Carl inquires why she's hesitant to accompany him, and Yoo explains that she feels more comfortable in Lemislag than at the palace. Carl respectfully asks her to reconsider, expressing his desire for her company. Yoo raises the question of whether he's defying his wife's wishes, to which Carl clarifies that they're not legally married yet. After a bit of back and forth, Carl eventually agrees, saying he'll respect her decision. But he's quick to add that they should still get moving because they've got some stuff to do together. At Carl's place, the secretary proudly announces that he's gathered all the best experts to create the most amazing engagement ring for you, worthy of both her and Carl. One of the experts chimes in, telling Yoo that the stone for her ring is a rare, uncut blue diamond that was just dug up from the Esfons mines. Another expert proudly shares that the ruby they've chosen is the crowning achievement of their guild. Carl asks Yoo if there's anything catching her eye among the options. She replies that they're all nice, but she just can't make up her mind. The experts then ask if she has a preference, and Yoo pipes up, saying she really likes pink diamonds. Excitedly, they start showing her all sorts of crafts featuring pink diamonds. Carl spots a dress and asks her opinion. She says she likes it, so they decide to go for it. At the tailor shop, Yoo picks out some dresses and asks Carl which one he prefers. He says they both look good on her. Then, she notices another dress and decides to try it on. She walks out in the gown, eager for Carl's opinion. She wanted to add a touch of romance by wearing a pink dress to complement the pink diamond. Turning to Carl, she asks, "How do I look?" Carl, with a warm smile, admires her appearance. "The color, like a calm night, perfectly accentuates your hair," he says. They share a moment, appreciating how well everything comes together. The next day, Yoo and Carl head to sign the marriage certificate, officially becoming husband and wife. As they step outside, Carl mentions he has to leave soon, but assures her it's just a temporary goodbye, he'll be back. Inwardly, she wonders if Carl is the reason she came to Elysian. She kisses him, and he playfully lifts her onto a bed of roses. She frets about the thorns on the roses, but Carl reassures her that Elysian roses don't have thorns. He affectionately calls her his lady, which she admits she likes. They start kissing, lost in the moment, and then they exchange manna right there, sealing their bond even further. A few days pass, and Yoo joins the boys outside, getting ready to depart. The butler kindly tells her she's always welcome at the house, now that she's the master of the Astrier household. She smiles at the gesture as she steps into the carriage, ready for the next adventure with her newfound family. She makes a decision to explore her independence. With Ivan's support, she looks forward to having fun times with Aspel, while also considering marriage with Carl. She feels the need for some time alone, free from any obligations, just to fully embrace herself in Elysian. As Yoo arrives in Diverda, she meets a kind woman who offers her assistance. Feeling drawn to the area, Yoo expresses her desire to stay there for a few months. Curious, the woman asks about Yoo's previous living situation. Yoo explains that she was being supported by a second-class military officer in Lemmeslag. However, he had to leave for a deployment, prompting her to seek a new place to stay in Diverda. Yoo hands over her documents to the woman, who seems taken aback to learn that Yoo is married to a first-class lead. Surprised, the woman asks why Yoo would come here if she already has a husband. Yoo laughs it off, explaining that she just needs some time for herself. The woman leads Yoo to the rooms, chatting along the way. She mentions that the rooms are placed side by side, but there's a catch, they're not completely soundproof. If Yoo happens to make a lot of noise at night, she'll receive a friendly warning. Yoo nods understandingly, appreciating the heads up. The woman explains that if the noise persists despite a few warnings, Yoo might be relocated to a room at the back. She mentions that guards patrol the hallway regularly to ensure everyone's safety. Then, she points out another room that's currently unoccupied and not assigned to anyone. The woman suggests Yoo can use it however she likes, as a kitchen, dressing room, or for any other purpose she prefers. Yoo suggests that the room would be ideal for Leo and Verda, as they didn't have a room at the mansion. Leo and Verda happily hug Yoo, grateful for the suggestion, while the woman finds Yoo's behavior a bit odd. As they continue walking and the woman shows them more rooms, she mentions that Yoo should inform her if she has a preferred room. Yoo responds with a casual, "Anywhere's fine." The woman suggests assigning Yoo to the room nearest to the entrance and gives her door a name. Yoo nods in agreement and heads to her new room. She settles onto the bed, taking in the smaller space compared to the mansion. Despite the size, there's a sense of coziness and belonging. It's like having her own little sanctuary amidst the hustle and bustle of life. The boys knock on Yoo's door and walk in, carrying her meal. They figured she might be hungry. Yoo thanks them and suggests sharing some with their neighbors as a friendly gesture. She asks Leo to lend a hand in preparing more food. Together, they plan to spread a bit of kindness to those around them. Yoo knocks on one of the doors, but there's no answer. She figures she'll catch them later and turns around. Suddenly, she spots some people nearby, which startles her a bit. She pauses, curious if they might be Korean like her. Approaching cautiously, she asks the lady, Ji Yun-han, if she speaks Korean. They exchange surprised smiles when they realize they share the same language and culture, instantly forming a connection. Yoo feels a sense of comfort knowing she's not alone in this new place. Yoo and Ji-yun settle down in the room, getting to know each other. Ji-yun, who's 22 and only a year younger than Yoo, offers to be like a younger sister to her. She notices how Yoo seems to have adapted pretty smoothly to their new surroundings, even though it's been a year already. However, Yoo confesses that she still feels like she hasn't fully settled in yet, despite the time that has passed. They chat, finding comfort in each other's company as they navigate their shared experiences. Ji-yeon mentions how there are plenty of strange customs here, and she's struggling to get used to the food. She admits she's not a fan of meeting new people, especially with Diverta having so many factions. They'll need to introduce themselves to the ladies of Ji-yeon's faction soon, which makes her a bit nervous. Yoo nods understandingly, realizing they both have their own challenges to overcome in this new place. Ji-yeon feels overwhelmed by the pressure to join a faction, and she's uncomfortable with the thought of her partner interacting freely with other women. Yoo suggests that if she's not okay with it, she could simply ask for exclusivity. Ji-yeon laughs at the idea, saying it's hard to imagine a guy actually agreeing to that. They share a light-hearted moment, acknowledging the complexities of relationships and social expectations. Ji-yeon asks Yoo how she ended up in Diverta, and Yoo explains that her boyfriend got chosen for deployment. She offers Ji-yeon a sandwich as they chat. Later, at the bath area, Yoo inquires about social gatherings, and Ji-yeon mentions that there will be plenty of men from different classes at the one in Diverta. She explains that she can tell their class by the way they dress. Yoo nods, taking it all in as they continue their conversation. If their clothes look overly flashy or fancy, it usually means they're trying too hard and might have gone beyond their means to impress women. Some girls enter, whispering amongst themselves. Ji-yeon recognizes them, they're from the class union. She points them out to Yoo, explaining their affiliation. Yoo nods, absorbing the information as they observe the scene. The girls from the 4th and 5th class unions enter. Ji-yeon mentions that she's part of that class union too. She explains that the union class is just a way for girls from the same faction to chat among themselves, like a tea party. Yoo suggests Ji-yeon should go say hi, but Ji-yeon hesitates, saying she's not confident in her Elysian language skills yet. Plus, she feels awkward approaching them since she hasn't been attending the union gatherings lately. At the front of Yoo's door, she spots a letter. Ji-yeon thinks it looks like an invitation card, probably from the class union she mentioned earlier. Yoo asks if they can go together, but Ji-yeon hesitates, saying she'd rather not. She explains that class unions are mostly made up of girls with lots of boyfriends or husbands. Then she compliments Yoo, saying she's pretty likable. Yoo smiles at the compliment, understanding Ji-yeon's perspective. Yoo grabs Ji-yeon's hand, expressing her desire to go with her. Days later, at the class union gathering, Yoo holds Ji-yeon's hand for support. A girl approaches them, introducing herself as Marion, and the girl beside her as Carrie. Marion remarks that Yoo must be the new girl they've heard about. She mentions they sent Yoo an invitation card and also acknowledges Ji-yeon with a friendly smile. Yoo and Ji-yeon exchange glances, feeling welcomed by the friendly atmosphere. Yoo gently corrects them on the pronunciation of Ji-yeon's name. Carrie suggests that Ji-yeon should go and say hi to the new girls elsewhere, so Ji-yeon walks away. Yoo stays with the girls and sits down. Yisoo asks Yoo how many guys she's seeing at the moment, and Yoo casually replies, 3. They continue chatting, unaware of the awkwardness left behind by Ji-yeon's departure. Yisoo remarks on Yoo's dating life, noting that despite being relatively new here for less than a year, she's already seeing 3 guys, which she finds impressive. Carrie adds that Yoo could do even better, given her looks. She points out a girl named Tia, mentioning that she's currently dating 12 guys. Kia chimes in, mentioning that they're all from lower classes. The conversation continues, with Yoo processing the information shared by her new acquaintances. Kia mentions that Yisoo is doing better than she is, one of her husbands is from the 3rd class. As they continue chatting, Yoo glances around the room, searching for Ji-yeon, but she can't spot her anywhere. Feeling concerned, Yoo apologizes to the girls, saying she needs to head back now. She gathers her things, eager to find Ji-yeon and make sure she's okay. Yoo looks around for Ji-yeon and spots her sitting on the floor. Curious, Yoo approaches and notices Ji-yeon holding a letter. Yoo asks if she's reading, and Ji-yeon nods, showing her the letter from her boyfriend, Gist. Ji-yeon excitedly shares about Gist's musical talent, He's amazing at playing the mandola and often performs during play intermissions, earning him lots of fans. She explains how Gist dreams of forming his own band and touring the world with their music. Ji-yeon's face lights up as she talks about her boyfriend's passion for music and his big dreams. Once again, the beautiful afternoon is spent at another social gathering. Some young boys interrupt, asking for their attention. They mention that their lady, Iosa, a second-class woman, wants some privacy under the tree for her afternoon beauty nap. Everyone gets up to accommodate her request, but you can't help but wonder if all high-class women are as stuck-up as Iosa. She sighs, feeling a bit frustrated by the situation. Yu feels curious and decides to check out the lady under the tree. She's surprised to find that the lady is really pretty, and she can't help but wonder how she manages to look so beautiful. Walking through the hallway afterward, Yu reflects to herself that these social gatherings are starting to feel exhausting. She considers taking a break from them for a while. Passing by, she notices another lady who looks happy as she reads a letter from her husband. Yu smiles, finding joy in the simple moments of happiness around her. Yu enters her room and flops down on her bed, feeling a bit down. It's been 2 weeks since she sent her letter, and she can't help but wonder if he even received them. Evian is away on deployment, and Carl is constantly busy, especially with all the wedding planning. As for Aspel, she muses that he has no excuse to leave her feeling lonely, since he's doing well and should be around. She sighs, wishing for a bit more company during these quiet moments. Yu opens her jewelry box, gazing at the pieces inside. She murmurs that they're reminders of past promises of love but admits she doesn't need them to feel special. Determined, she decides to give some jewelry to Ji-yeon as a gesture of friendship. Spotting Ji-yeon wearing some jewelry, Yu wonders if her boyfriend gifted them to her, considering they're still new. She smiles to herself, happy for her friend. Ji-yeon pulls out a surprise for Yu, a ticket to her boyfriend's performance. She confesses she bought them secretly without her boyfriend knowing. Excitedly, Ji-yeon shares how her boyfriend will be the main actor, and she can't wait to surprise him. She asks Yu if she'll come along, and Yu's eyes light up as she agrees. They chat excitedly about the upcoming event, eager to share the special moment together. Yu and Ji-yeon head to the performance with high hopes, excited to see Ji-yeon's boyfriend in action. However, as they watch, they realize he's not part of the show. Disappointment washes over Ji-yeon, and she decides to leave. Yu follows her outside, understanding her feelings. They walk together, with Yu offering words of comfort and encouragement. Ji-yeon opens up about her disappointment, and Yu listens attentively, assuring her that things will get better. They share a moment of support and understanding before heading home together. Yu approaches the actors and inquires if they know someone named Gist who works there. She explains that he was supposed to be there today. One of the guys informs her that Gist left the theater 2 weeks ago. Ji-yeon, shocked, accidentally drops her bouquet of flowers and expresses her confusion. Yu looks concerned, realizing there must have been a misunderstanding. The actor suggests that Gist might be working at the Saramahan goods shop. Yu thanks him for the information. As they walk, Yu asks Ji-yeon what she wants to do next. Ji-yeon decides she's going to find Gist and talk to him herself. She mentions that 2 weeks ago, they hadn't even started dating. Yu nods understandingly, supporting her friend's decision to seek clarity. They reach the goods shop and observe a worker treating Gist unfairly. Afterwards, they convene at another spot, and Ji-yeon directly asks him about the situation. She wonders why he's not at the theater as the lead for today's performance. Ji-yeon shares that she found out he was kicked out from the theater 2 weeks ago, and now he's working here. She expresses her confusion and disappointment, questioning if he intended to keep deceiving her if she hadn't discovered the truth on her own. Ji-yeon waits for his response, her feelings a mix of hurt and frustration. He admits that he was only an understudy, not the lead actor. Plus, he confesses that his acting and mandola playing skills are just okay, nothing special. And yes, he did get kicked out 2 weeks ago. They found someone better looking and more talented for the role, so he got fired. Gist looks down, feeling a mix of embarrassment and disappointment in himself. Ji-yeon listens quietly, feeling a pang of sympathy for him. Ji-yeon questions why he didn't just tell her the truth from the start. Gist explains that he couldn't bring himself to do it. He admits that meeting her was like a stroke of luck during his brief time at the theater. Now that he's lost his job and doesn't have much to show for it, he couldn't bear to let her go. Ji-yeon listens, feeling a mix of understanding and sadness for him. Eventually, she decides to leave with you, feeling conflicted about the situation. Ji-yeon stays holed up in her room for 4 days straight, hardly even going to classes. She shuts herself off from everyone, including you, refusing to talk. At the dining room, Yoo sits alone, feeling lost and worried about her friend. Suddenly, Yosa drops her food on the table and gives you a stern look. She advises you to snap out of it, saying she shouldn't waste her time searching for some useless girl. Yoo feels taken aback by Yosa's harsh words, wondering who she thinks she is to judge Ji-yeon like that. Yoo confronts Yosa, asking her what she means by her earlier comments. Yosa replies, saying it's a shame Yoo doesn't realize what she sees. She brings up the saying, "Keep your friends close but your enemies closer," suggesting it applies to everyone here. As they continue eating, they overhear some girls gossiping about you. They're saying they want to use her to find high-ranking men. Yoo feels a mix of surprise and disappointment at the rumors circulating about her. Yosa remarks that Yoo is the center of everyone's attention lately. She advises you to be cautious and take a step back, as not everyone is as they seem. With a warning, Yosa leaves. Just as Yosa departs, Ji-yeon arrives and asks to join you. Yoo notices a hairpin Ji-yeon is wearing and wonders who it could be from, as it can't be from her boyfriend. She also notices Ji-yeon's new wristband, and knowing her boyfriend is currently unemployed, she finds it curious. Yoo's mind starts to race with questions about Ji-yeon's recent acquisitions. Later that day, outside, Yoo spots Yosa. Yosa approaches and holds out a key, explaining that she's been waiting to give it to you. It's a key to Ji-yeon's room, and Yosa suggests they could say you borrowed it for a while. She thought you might want it for some reason. Yoo looks at the key, feeling surprised by Yosa's offer and unsure of what to make of it. Yoo enters Ji-yeon's room and spots a box with a letter and gifts neatly arranged on the bed. Curious, she picks up the letter and sees it's from Aspelis. He's been sending gifts to Ji-yeon. Yoo's surprise grows as she finds more letters with gifts from both Ivan and Carl. Overwhelmed, she can't help but cry, wondering how Ji-yeon could keep this hidden from her. Yoo's emotions swirl as she tries to process the discovery, feeling hurt and betrayed by her friend's secret. Yoo steps outside, feeling a mix of hurt and confusion after discovering Ji-yeon's secret. She notices Ji-yeon waving at her with a new bracelet on her hand, but Yoo chooses to ignore her. Instead, she heads straight to Yosa. Yosa notices Yoo's expression and comments that she looks surprised. Yoo brushes it off, saying it's nothing, although inside she's feeling deeply troubled. Yosa reassures Yoo, mentioning that other girls in the group are much worse. Yoo wonders if all the girls in the group are like that, and Yosa replies that not in her group. She invites Yoo to join her, offering a sense of comfort and belonging in the midst of Yoo's confusion. Today, Yoo joins a new community and is surprised to find only 3 people there. She asks about the other person, and Felicia emerges, reminding Yoo to keep it down in the library. Yosa is taken aback that Yoo knows Felicia. She explains that many people know Felicia because she's the student body president, but Yosa wonders how Felicia knows Yoo. Felicia turns to Yosa, questioning why Yoo is there. Suddenly, Felicia rushes over to Yoo and gives her a hug. She gushes about how cute Yoo looks up close, admitting she couldn't take her eyes off Yoo the first time she saw her. Felicia confesses that she wanted to ask Yoo to join them, but she hesitated because Yoo doesn't live in the dorms and already has a supporter, so she didn't want to bother her. Yoo smiles, feeling touched by Felicia's kind words. As they sit down, Felicia officially introduces herself to Yoo. She mentions that another name for their group is the student body. Iosa adds that the name carries more weight than it actually does, considering Felicia does all the work. Felicia smiles and declares that Yoo is now part of the student body, welcoming her warmly to the group. Yoo feels a sense of belonging, grateful for their acceptance. The new community is a bit odd, but Yoo finds herself enjoying it. Later that day, most of the girls are outside when Aspel walks in. Yoo rushes over to hug him, feeling happy to see him again at last. Aspel smiles and hands her lots of gifts to share with her friends. Excited, Yoo goes over to Iosa and Felicia to share the gifts with them. They all gather around, grateful for Aspel's thoughtful gesture. Ji-yeon stands with a group of other girls, looking surprised. Marion walks up to Yoo and asks what's happening. She thought Yoo's supporter had cut her off. Yoo questions who told her about that. In a flashback to the class union, Marion asks Ji-yeon why Yoo doesn't attend the union anymore. Ji-yeon starts to explain, saying it's kind of private, but she's interrupted by Yoo's sponsor. She mentions that Yoo got cut off by her sponsor and isn't handling it well. Back in the present, Ji-yeon announces that she's going to leave, but Iosa intervenes, questioning where she thinks she's going. Yoo quickly grabs Ji-yeon's hand, signaling for her to stay. Aspel spots the bracelet on Ji-yeon's wrist and recognizes it as the gift he gave to Yoo. Ji-yeon hesitates for a moment, then removes the bracelet and claims it as her own. She voices her frustration, questioning why Yoo seems to always get everything and gets to be the special one. Gripping Yoo's arm, Ji-yeon expresses her disappointment, feeling like she was supposed to have what Yoo has. Yoo firmly tells Ji-yeon that she can't become her by taking her things. Remembering what the instructor said about Elysian having a plan for everyone, Yoo reflects on how she's been trying to figure it out since arriving. Despite their differences, Yoo sincerely hopes Ji-yeon finds happiness in Elysian too. She offers Ji-yeon the bracelet, acknowledging that if it will make her happy, then it's hers to keep. Ji-yeon stands there, tears streaming down her face, as she takes off the bracelet and storms off. Inside Yoo's room, Aspel admits he had no clue about the situation. He confesses he was starting to get concerned about Ji-yeon. Yoo quickly apologizes, saying she didn't mean to give away his gift like that. Aspel reassures her, saying it's no big deal and that he can always get her another one. They share a kiss, and Yoo confesses that she misses Aspel. They exchange manna, feeling connected. Since that day, Ji-yeon never shows up again, and Yoo feels relieved to have one less problem to worry about. However, due to gossip about Aspel, it seems like her life has become even more complicated. Yoo realizes that her husband will likely remain a secret for a long time to come. Iosa, Felicia, and Yoo notice a beautifully wrapped gift box placed in front of Yoo's door. They comment on how fortunate she is to receive such a gift and wonder if it's from her boyfriend. Yoo shakes her head and explains that it's actually from her sponsor. Felicia reacts with surprise, wrapping Yoo in a warm hug. She reassures Yoo, expressing disbelief that anyone could ever think of leaving such a kind and adorable person like her without gifts and tokens of appreciation. Inside Yoo's room, she reads the letter from Ivan. She notes that all his letters are about killing monsters. According to the letter, he sent a monster hide as a souvenir to the house. Yoo chuckles at the idea and thinks it's practical. She can use the hide to make new shoes for herself, which she finds both thoughtful and amusing. Yoo heads to the butler's office where he hands her a piece of leather used for making shoes. She's excited about the gift and eagerly waits for more. The butler then surprises her with a ribbon that will complement the shoes perfectly. As she's taking in the moment, she notices another guy standing beside the butler and asks about his identity. The butler explains that the guy standing beside him is his replacement. He will take over as the butler for the Astrier household once the current butler retires. The butler mentions that he's over 70 years old now and will be retiring soon. From now on, the new guy will be responsible for assisting you. After a while, Yoo decides to visit the room where Ivan proposed to her, feeling a rush of nostalgia and longing for him. Back at Diverta, she joins her friends for a relaxing picnic in the sunshine. As they chat and enjoy the food, Iosa mentions that she has some exciting news to share with you. With a smile, she reveals that their dear friend Felicia is going to tie the knot with a minister. The group erupts in happy chatter, congratulating Felicia and sharing their excitement for her future. Felicia reveals that she'll soon be moving to live with the La Festa household. Yoo expresses her disappointment, feeling like she was just beginning to bond with Felicia. In a teary embrace, Felicia tells Yoo that she feels the same way. She expresses how happy she was to finally be with her adorable friend Yoo. Felicia insists that Yoo must come to visit her and promises to have the staff prepare a super fancy dinner for her. They share a heartfelt moment before parting ways. Yoo feels they should plan something special for Felicia before she leaves, and assures her they'll definitely visit her soon. Wondering where Felicia is headed, she asks if it's her sponsor's house. Yoo then reveals her own upcoming wedding plans, sparking curiosity among her friends. When they inquire about the groom's identity, Yoo leans in, whispering his name to them, adding an air of excitement to the conversation. They gather in Yoo's room, marveling at the news of her upcoming marriage to a royal family member. Iosa expresses amazement at the match, while Felicia assures Yoo that she truly deserves it. They all promise to visit Yoo soon after she settles in. Curious about where she'll be staying, Yoo admits she hasn't decided yet. Felicia and Iosa quickly offer their support, pledging to be there for her. With a sense of reassurance, they hug each other tightly, reaffirming their bond as true friends. While walking together, Yoo, Felicia, and Iosa notice other girls whispering about them, commenting on their elevated status. Iosa leans towards Yoo and whispers softly, suggesting that if the girls knew who Yoo was marrying, they'd be amazed. Yoo nods knowingly but doesn't divulge the secret, feeling a sense of anticipation about her upcoming nuptials. In the classroom, Julie tasks Yoo, Felicia, and Iosa with an assignment, and they excel at it effortlessly. Once they finish, Julie takes a moment to address the class. She shares with them an interesting fact about Elysian culture: women are allowed to have multiple husbands. Julie elaborates, explaining that during mana exchanges, a peculiar phenomenon occurs: a white, egg-like sphere materializes in the woman's heart. The tiny egg, no bigger than a thumbnail, glows with radiant beams of light, illuminating its surroundings. After a while, it disconnects from the woman's body and morphs into a true egg shape. From then on, it becomes the man's duty to nurture and care for the egg, ensuring its well-being. When a woman shares mana with more than one man, she can end up with multiple eggs inside her. Each egg takes on the traits and powers of its respective parent, making it clear who the father is. This unique process ensures that all women will eventually have eggs of their own. After class, as Yoo steps outside, Leo rushes up to her, telling her to wait. She asks what's up, and he says Master Ivan has returned and is waiting for her at the entrance. Yoo drops her books and sprints to the entrance, where she sees Ivan holding a bouquet of flowers. She rushes forward and hugs him tightly. As they hug, some girls glance at them from a distance. Ivan tells Yoo how much he's missed her and hopes she's been doing well. Yoo reassures him that she's fine, and he tells her not to worry about him, he's just a bit tired. But now that he's back with her, all his troubles seem to vanish. He lifts her off the ground and suggests they head home together. He adds that he's glad she's back because he missed her company. As they ride home, he talks about his time away, sharing stories about his adventures and the challenges he faced. Yoo listens intently, enjoying being reunited with him and hearing about his experiences. They laugh together and exchange stories, savoring each moment of their journey back home. Ivan eagerly shares his excitement about being back home with her, expressing his desire to spend quality time together once they're inside. Yoo notices his increased assertiveness, which surprises her. Upon reaching home, she suggests they continue inside, but Ivan's passionate kisses don't cease. Despite her attempts to guide him towards the bedroom, he persists, prompting her to reflect on his changed behavior compared to before. Ivan impatiently suggests they start exchanging manna, but Yoo insists on taking a break to rest first. As they lie together later, Yoo notices Ivan's shorter hair. He explains that it was getting in the way during battles, so he decided to cut it. Curious, he asks if she liked his hair better when it was longer, and Yoo replies that she doesn't have a preference either way. Ivan offers to grow his hair out if Yoo prefers it that way, but she assures him that he looks great with his current haircut. She excitedly shows him the belt she made from the leather he sent, and he compliments her, saying it suits her perfectly. However, he admits that he can't seem to focus on anything other than her. Evian's back home after a stint at the dorms, feeling relieved to be in familiar surroundings. But there's no time to relax because finals are looming just around the corner. She's got a laundry list of things to get through before the big week arrives. The final exam for her first year at Diverta is no joke, it stretches out for a whopping 4 days straight. First up is the language exam, where she'll have to flex her verbal muscles. Then, it's on to social studies, where she'll need to brush up on her knowledge of society and culture. Day 3 is all about practical knowledge, putting her skills to the test in real-world scenarios. And finally, the grand finale is the Mana Skills exam, where she'll have to show off her magical abilities. It's a daunting lineup, but Evian's ready to tackle it head-on. The teacher gathers everyone's attention, giving them a heads-up about what's going down. As soon as they step into the magic ring, their mana levels will pop up on the scale. They're instructed to line up and take their turn. The front line kicks things off, and when it's Yu's turn, something crazy happens. She steps in, and bam! She totally smashes the scale with her off-the-charts mana levels. Yu feels a bit sheepish and blurts out a quick sorry for the scale fiasco. But the teacher's totally chill about it, mentioning she's seen this movie before. Apparently, for brides with more than one sponsor, the magic scale maxes out at 3.5. The classroom turns into a buzzing hive of whispers and murmurs as students try to wrap their heads around Yu's scale-busting feat. They're all scratching their heads, wondering how on earth a first year like her managed to pull off such a stunt. It's the talk of the classroom for sure. At home, Yu plops down next to Evian, who notices she seems like she had quite the day. Yu nods, admitting it was pretty wild, especially with all the mana stuff going on lately. She confesses she's still not quite getting this whole mana scale thing, especially the 3.5 part. It's all a bit too out there for her to grasp. Evian offers to clear things up and says he'll just demonstrate it to her. He pulls out a rock and explains that it's what folks use to pay their mana tax. Anything tinier than a thumbnail is roughly a 1.0 stone, and you can pack it with about level 1 mana powers. Usually, folks in the 4th or 5th ranks hit around 2.8 on the scale, but there are some outliers who soar up to 3.4 with their mana powers. She notes how big the differences are, even among classmates, and he nods, acknowledging the diversity. He elaborates, saying that hitting about 3.5 could open doors to the military in the 3rd rank. But the real deal comes with reaching a 4.0 on the scale. That's when you level up to the 2nd rank, but it also means shelling out a hefty amount of mana taxes for every quarter. It's like a whole new world of responsibility and power. She figures she's sitting at about a 3rd rank military level with her mana powers. He agrees, saying it looks like that's the case. He admits he would have guessed her to be around 3.4, but it's pretty surprising to find out she's pushing past 3.5. He adds that her mana seems to mirror her calm personality, which is pretty cool to see. He mentions that having mana powers around 5 is super rare in all of Lemislag, and she's already acquainted with one of them. It's a pretty mind-blowing fact. She nods in agreement, realizing just how special her 3 pals are. They're all truly remarkable individuals. Summer vacation has finally rolled around, and there's some exciting mail waiting for her. First up, there's a letter announcing her official diploma from Diverta, bumping her up to the 4th rank. It's a pretty big deal. Then, there's another letter from Carl, asking her to jot down the criteria for who she wants to invite to their wedding. Looks like there's some serious planning to be done. Carl's basically curious about the kind of dudes Yoo wants to see at their wedding. He knows brides are like the stars of Elysian weddings, so it's a primo opportunity to mingle and meet new people. Yoo wonders if she can bring along her girl gang to the wedding, but Evian steps in with a bit of wedding tradition. He explains that usually, weddings only have women as brides, but if he wants to mix things up and invite her friends, it's all good. They're flexible like that. Felicia and Iosa get their hands on the wedding invite and decide to hit the road to Carlion. They hop into the carriage, and Yoo admits she's never ventured this far from the city before. Evian chimes in, mentioning that the journey to Carlion isn't a walk in the park. The roads can be pretty rough and perilous, especially for regular folks like them. Yoo leans out of the carriage to wave at her buddies in the other one. Evian pipes up, mentioning it'll be around 4 days till they reach their destination. He hands her a cup of tea, explaining it'll ease any queasiness and make the journey feel a bit less tiring. It's like a little pick-me-up for the road. Finally, they arrive at their destination, and Evian suggests Yoo take a peek outside. She's blown away by how stunning the city looks. Excitedly, she asks if they can hit the beach she spots and go for a swim. Evian hesitates a bit, explaining there are some small monsters lurking near the ocean, so it might not be the safest spot for a dip. But he suggests they head to the river instead, where it's totally chill and safe. He thinks it'd be a blast to go there with her friends. As they make their way down from the carriage, Felicia and Iosa can't help but gush over how stunning the city looks. Yoo's eyes are searching for Carl's house, but Evian suggests they start making their way through the city. Yoo spots a lovely house and wonders if it's where Carl lives. Evian takes her hand, gently redirecting her attention, and points out another magnificent palace nearby. It seems like they're in for quite the adventure. Carl steps out to greet them with a smile, curious if Felicia and Iosa are Yoo's friends. Yoo nods happily, confirming their friendship. Carl then directs his secretary to guide their guests to the guest room located in the main hall. Meanwhile, he offers to personally escort Yoo to her room. Before they split up, Evian gives Yoo a sweet peck on the cheek, reassuring her that they'll meet up later. Carl guides Yoo to her room, and she can't help but admire its beauty. She asks if he personally set it up for her. Carl explains that he wasn't entirely sure about her preferences, so he kept things basic. He suggests she can add her own touch to it after the wedding. But right now, they've got some wedding details to iron out. So, he suggests they make their way to the reception hall for a chat. In the reception hall, Carl lays out the plans. The date's all set, but they've got a choice of 2 spots for the wedding. One is the main ceremonial hall at the Carlion headquarters, and the other is his own mansion. Yoo wonders which one he prefers, but Carl shrugs and says he's cool with either option. However, Carl mentions that the main ceremonial hall is open for anyone's wedding. Yoo pipes up, expressing her desire to have the wedding at his mansion instead. Carl's totally on board with the idea, saying it sounds awesome. He then mentions that the dress designs have been sorted out and shows her the list of guests. He's tried to pick out high-ranking men to introduce to her. Yoo reassures him that it's all good if he wants to invite other men as well. Carl brings up an interesting topic, the bridal night. He explains that in Elysian customs, it's not the night of the wedding that's special, but the one before. This night is all about showcasing the exchange of manna between 2 guests. He's curious if you learned about this in her Diverta classes. It's a fascinating tradition to dive into. Later that night, Yoo plops down on her bed, feeling overwhelmed by all the wedding planning ahead. Carl notices her exhaustion and suggests she get some shut-eye since she must be worn out from the journey. The next morning, Carl checks in on her, asking if she slept well. Yoo wonders if he stayed up all night, and he casually mentions that his body doesn't need sleep. It's just another day for him. He checks in with you, making sure she's feeling alright after the long day. She admits she's still a bit tired, but it's nothing too overwhelming. Then, he casually wonders if she thinks she'll be more refreshed by tonight. But before he can say much more, Yoo playfully interrupts, suggesting they don't need to wait for the cover of darkness. With a mischievous grin, she leans in and starts peppering him with kisses, igniting a spark between them. They share a tender moment, exchanging manna as they bask in each other's presence. It's a spontaneous and heartfelt connection that leaves them both feeling even closer. Later that afternoon, Carl pops the question, asking Yoo if she's in the mood for breakfast or lunch. Yoo shrugs, saying she's good with whatever. Just then, Evian knocks on the door and comments that she looks a bit worn out. He figures it must have been a busy morning. Evian then offers to whip up something to eat, mentioning there's an egg cake she's been craving. Gathered around the dining table, Evian and Carl each present Yoo with a plate of their delicious creations, urging her to give them a try. She happily digs in, enjoying every bite until she's completely satisfied. Evian mentions that her friends have headed out to hunt for dresses for the big day. Carl chimes in, suggesting it would be nice for her to join them, but he quickly adds that they'll be pretty busy getting everything ready for the wedding. So, while it could be fun, they might need her help with the preparations. While Carl and Yoo head off to check out dresses and food, Evian pulls Yoo aside for a moment. He reaches into his pocket and reveals 2 rings, explaining that he's chosen their engagement rings. He mentions that there's a tradition where the bride needs to show others if she's engaged to someone else, so he took the liberty of picking out the rings himself. It's a thoughtful gesture from him to mark their commitment to each other. He adds that he'd prefer to pick out their wedding rings together, and she wraps him in a hug, touched by his sentiment. Later, in Yoo's room, she leans in to kiss Carl, mentioning that tomorrow is their big day. Carl replies with a grin, saying that tonight marks their first night together. It's a special moment for them both. They'll exchange manna to show their bond to the guests, sealing their commitment to each other in front of their loved ones. Today is Yoo's first wedding, but she's feeling incredibly exhausted, all thanks to Carl. She had told him to take it easy since the wedding was just around the corner, but it seems like he's completely transformed. When she first met him, he was almost like a robot, but now he's like a ravenous beast, unable to contain his excitement. Yoo's friends shower her with congratulations, and everyone's beaming with joy. After a quick change, Yoo joins Carl at the front, and they exchange their vows. The guests are all smiles, genuinely happy for the newlyweds. As they settle in at the reception, Yoo starts to wonder where Aspel is. Right on cue, he sneaks up from behind and plants a sweet kiss on her cheeks. Aspel strikes up a conversation with Yoo, asking how she's been and if the wedding prep was too much of a hassle. Yoo reassures him that she's doing all right. Meanwhile, Carl exchanges a handshake with Aspel. Over at Aspel's father's table, a guy leans over and quizzes Aspel about whether his son is dating Kiazer's wife. Aspel casually responds, explaining that they were already a couple before she even crossed paths with Kiazer. As the father pours Evian a drink, he remarks that Evian should look out for both Yoo and his own son. Aspel, curious, questions why his father is asking Evian to take care of him. The father explains that he raised Evian as if he were his eldest son, so it's only natural to ask him to watch over his younger brother. Aspel is puzzled and asks why his father keeps referring to Evian as his son when Aspel is the real son. His father simply responds, saying it's because Evian still has some growing up to do. The father suddenly gets upset, scolding Aspel for being rude to Kiazer earlier. He reminds Aspel that Kiazer is his bride-to-be's first husband. Aspel realizes his dad is pretty drunk, so he gently guides him to his room to rest. Meanwhile, Evian shares with Yoo that when his own father passed away, Sir Caskell stepped up and raised him like he was his own son. Aspelis and Evian have never really seen eye to eye. Aspelis would often pick fights with Evian, making it clear he didn't want him around. But Evian wasn't one to back down easily. He always stood up for himself, even if it meant facing off against Aspilus. This constant tension made Evian feel like the odd one out in the family, like the black sheep. Yoo quietly ponders to herself that perhaps her second wedding might happen sooner than she had initially thought, considering the strained relationship between Aspilus and Evian. With the wedding now behind her, Yoo finds herself officially someone's wife. Life has been a whirlwind of activity ever since. Sorting through the countless wedding gifts and sprucing up her room have kept her incredibly busy, taking up most of her time these days. Yoo finds herself seated at the dining table with Carl, Evian, Aspel, and his father, Caskell. Caskell warmly thanks Yoo for joining them, appreciating that she set aside some time to be with them. Yoo smiles back, mentioning that she wanted to have a chat with him before he heads back to Lemmislag. Caskell nods in understanding before revealing the true purpose of their luncheon. He explains that they've gathered to discuss the idea of hosting an engagement event for Aspilus. It's a momentous occasion that they want to celebrate together as a family. Caskell suggests they go all out and make the engagement event super fancy, like a big wedding celebration. Yoo wonders if an engagement really needs such a grand party. She remembers how simple her own engagement with Evian was, just exchanging rings. But seeing the excitement on Aspilus's face, she decides to go along with his wishes. After all, it's his special day, and she wants to support him in making it memorable. Aspel scoops Yoo up in his arms, declaring that he's going to make the engagement party unforgettable for everyone. Evian chimes in, mentioning that Yoo isn't a fan of big, fancy events. Aspel quickly tells him to hush. Evian adds that Yoo seems pretty tired from all the wedding excitement. Caskell assures everyone that they'll be mindful not to overwhelm her with too much pressure. After all, her well-being is their top priority. He turns to Yoo, curious about her preferences. Does she lean more towards vibrant and extravagant events or sophisticated and fancy ones? Aspel and Evian immediately dive into a debate about it, each advocating for their own preference. But Yoo surprises them both by saying she actually enjoys both styles. She's open to either option and is just excited to celebrate the special occasion with everyone. Yoo casually asks Aspel when he's heading back to Lemmislag. He replies that it'll be soon. Yoo then suggests that before he leaves, she'd like to have a private chat with him. Aspel nods, saying he's totally free whenever she wants to meet up. Later on, Yoo heads over to Aspel's room, but when he opens the door, he's shirtless. Without wasting a moment, he pulls her inside and starts kissing her. Yoo hesitates, mentioning that she hasn't washed up yet, but Aspel just carries her over to the bed. He reassures her, saying that soon he'll be putting a ring on her finger, so she just needs to hold on a bit longer. Yoo gives him a kiss on the cheek, feeling the warmth of their connection. The following day, Yoo hangs out with her friends, knowing they'll be heading back home the next day. Iosa expresses her wish to stay longer, soaking up the moment. Felicia turns to Yoo, curious about how she's feeling now that the wedding festivities are all done and dusted. Yoo simply replies that she's feeling incredibly busy, with a never-ending to-do list keeping her on her toes. Felicia shares a tidbit about Elysian customs, mentioning that women have the freedom to choose where they want to stay even after getting married. So, in a way, it's not all that different from being single. Iosa, curious as ever, turns to Yoo and asks about marriage customs from her homeland. But unfortunately, Yoo draws a blank, unable to recall any specifics about marriage traditions from where she was born. Felicia nods in agreement, mentioning how memories tend to fade over time. She admits that she doesn't remember much about life on Earth either. It all feels so far away now, almost like it wasn't even real. But she's come to terms with it and is determined to make the most of her life here in the present moment. Once she returns to Lemmislag after the wedding, she finds herself suddenly thrust into the spotlight, unable to escape the attention everyone is giving her. Her friends shower her with compliments about her new uniform, which helps to ease her discomfort. Yoo explains that Evian gifted her the uniform, but she's unsure where he managed to get it from. It's a mystery to her, but she's grateful for the thoughtful gesture. Spotting some newcomers, you can't help but reminisce inwardly about her own experiences as a newbie just a year ago. Suddenly, a girl approaches and asks you where the library is located. You kindly offers to escort her there since she's heading in that direction anyway. It's a small gesture, but it's nice to be able to help out a fellow student. You spots the girl who had asked a question during their first class in Diverta. Curious, she asks the girl if she got married. They find a place to sit, and the girl shares that while her husband may not have as high a ranking as Yu's husband, he's a perfect match for her. She's genuinely happy with him and couldn't ask for more. Yu quietly notes to herself that the girl seems more cheerful than she did before. The girl shares that a year ago, she struggled to understand why she was chosen for Diverta. It felt unfair and confusing to her at the time. But as she spent more time here, she came to a realization. She admits that she never truly wanted the responsibility of taking care of her family back home. Deep down, she yearned to break free and escape. Perhaps, she muses, that's why she ended up being selected to come here, to find a happier life and pursue her own dreams. As Yu reminisces about her time in Elysian, she realizes that it's not a flawless world. But despite its imperfections, she can't help but feel grateful for the happiness she's found here. Thinking about the joy she experiences every day, she's genuinely glad to be a part of Elysian. Today is the day of Yu's engagement party with Aspel. They exchange rings amidst applause from the guests. As they all sit at the table, Caskell announces that since everyone is gathered here today, he has an important announcement to share. He expresses his desire to gift an estate in the capital to his son's fiancée, Ms. Yu. It's a generous gesture that surprises everyone at the table. Aspel and his father get into a heated argument because the estate will be located next to his father's house, and Aspel doesn't want to live so close to him. Caskell insists that the decision ultimately lies with Yu. He assures her that the estate will be constructed with the best facilities and interior design, making it a truly grand mansion. It's a tempting offer, but Yu has some serious thinking to do before making her decision. Upon learning that Yu loves beaches and lakes, Caskell takes it upon himself to request a large garden with a pool to be built as well. He suggests that the addition of these features would make the place even more glorious to live in. Yu expresses her excitement, agreeing that it sounds wonderful. Caskell reassures her that he'll have the construction redone to fit her taste perfectly, and he's open to adding anything she wants to make the estate even more tailored to her preferences. Aspel's friends gather around Yu, eager to chat with her. Aspel interrupts, looking a bit flustered, and suggests that Yu must be tired after such a long day. He leads her to a different room for some privacy. Yu playfully remarks that she thought Aspel never gets jealous, to which he responds that he isn't jealous, he's just worried that his friends might be bothering her too much. Yu teases him, jokingly mentioning her interest in getting to know one of Aspel's friends better. Yu chuckles at Aspel's nervousness and gives him a quick peck on the cheek. She suggests they head to their room for some alone time together. Aspel gladly obliges, carrying her up to their room. He affectionately refers to her as his future bride, eager to spend some quality time with her. Several days have passed, and Yu now finds herself seated at dinner with Carl, Generalissimo Service, and his wife in their lavish mansion. The unusual circumstance that brought them together tonight was Carl's unexpected visit to Yu's home a few days ago, well into the evening. During his visit, he mentioned his wish for his wife to accompany him tonight, and everyone agreed to the impromptu gathering. So, amidst friendly conversation and delicious food, they share this unexpected but pleasant evening together. Ivan inquires if Carl is referring to his upcoming deployment assignment, to which Carl confirms. Ivan then points out that while it might not be a distant location, it could still be quite challenging for someone like Yu, who isn't trained as a soldier. He wonders if Carl has a specific reason for wanting Yu to accompany him on his deployment. 2 weeks ago, Carl finds himself in Generalissimo Service's mansion. As he drifts off to sleep, he hears his door creak open, and a lady enters, reaching out to touch him. Assuming it's you, he's surprised to discover it's someone else. Startled, he grabs her hand and questions her about what she wants. The lady introduces herself as Mail, the new wife of Generalissimo Service. As Mail starts to undress him, she mentions that she thought she could help him calm down his estrus. But Carl swiftly stops her, taking hold of her hand. He clarifies that his door is locked with a key only for emergencies, not for strangers to wander in uninvited. He firmly insists that she should leave right away, emphasizing the need for her to respect his privacy and boundaries. Currently, at the dining table, Mail turns to Yoo and suggests that it's probably her first time at Service. She kindly offers to give her a tour of the place. Generalissimo agrees, saying it sounds like a wonderful idea. He suggests they explore while he and Carl discuss some business matters privately. As Mail guides Yoo through the mansion, she mutters under her breath that Yoo isn't even that pretty. Yoo catches wind of her comment, and Mail quickly turns to her, saying that you shouldn't let it go to her head. Mail insinuates that Yoo thinks highly of herself just because she's married to a handsome and high-ranking husband, but Mail believes Yoo simply got lucky. Yoo confidently responds, reminding Mail that she, too, lucked out by marrying a high-ranking generalissimo and receiving a status boost. With a nervous laugh, Yoo admits she didn't intend to voice her thoughts aloud. However, Mail's temper flares, and she raises her hand, delivering a sharp slap to Yoo's cheek. Accusing Yoo of arrogance for daring to see herself as equal to Mail, despite being just a fourth ranker, Mail's words sting. Unfazed, Yoo reacts swiftly, delivering a firm slap in return, asserting her own worth in the confrontation. Yoo confidently states that she and Mail are not on the same level. While luck may have played a part in both of their situations, Yoo emphasizes that she doesn't envy what's not rightfully hers. She hints at knowing about Mail's attempt to enter her husband's room, which probably bruised her ego when he turned her down. This rejection likely left a mark on Mail's pride, unlike Yoo, who doesn't seek validation from others in the same way. Yoo raises a valid point, suggesting that it would hurt even more if others were to find out about Mail's actions. Mail responds confidently, stating that Yoo wouldn't dare to reveal her secret. Yoo counters, remarking that Mail isn't entirely shameless, implying that she has some sense of decency left. She accuses Mail of not only coveting what isn't hers but also attempting to drag others down with her actions. Just as Mail raises her hand to slap Yoo again, a voice interrupts them. It's her husband and Carl entering the scene. Carl quickly rushes to Yoo's side, concerned about what's happening. Generalissimo turns to Mail, asking her what's going on. Carl demands to know what's with the insolence. Carl clarifies that he refrained from mentioning anything to the Generalissimo to avoid further embarrassment for Mail in front of her husband. Yet, he stresses that he can't simply overlook such disrespect towards his wife. Yoo steps in, swiftly grabbing Carl's arm to reassure him that she's all right. With a chuckle, she adds that she managed to retaliate against Mail even more effectively. Yoo expresses her concern about escalating the situation further, as she still wants to maintain a place to stay in Service. She hints at the potential consequences if things get worse. In Carl's carriage, he apologizes to Yoo, feeling responsible for bringing her into such a situation. However, Yoo reassures him, saying she doesn't blame him at all. In fact, she found the confrontation somewhat cathartic. She admits feeling frustrated that she can't take action against the girl who attempted to harm him. Yoo suggests that he should ensure she's with him if similar situations occur in the future. Carl expresses uncertainty about being able to anticipate such incidents. Yoo jokes that maybe she should consider putting a chastity belt on him every time he goes on deployment. In Yoo's house, Ivan expresses disbelief that Yoo had to endure such a situation. He regrets allowing her to go to such a dangerous place. Yoo reassures him, saying it's okay, she wanted to go regardless. She would have gone even if Carl hadn't wanted her to. Ivan admits he trusted Carl to keep her safe better than he could. Ivan expresses disbelief that such things happened to Yoo. Then, with a determined look, he stands up and takes Yoo's hand, leading her outside. He tells her to grab a basket, hinting at a surprise. As they step into the fresh air, he gestures for her to open the basket. Inside, nestled among the folds, lies a small creature, a baby monster pet. Ivan explains that he came across it during his deployment when it was just an egg. He believes that with proper training from birth, it could grow into an excellent guard. Plus, he adds with a grin, it has an almost eternal lifespan, which means it could be a lifelong companion for her. As they stand together, Yoo expresses her gratitude for Ivan's thoughtfulness. She reflects on how his gift symbolizes not just protection, but also the enduring bond between them. Ivan nods, emphasizing that he'll always be there for her, just like the moon that orbits around its center. They share a moment of understanding and appreciation, both reassured by the strength of their connection. Yoo turns to Ivan with a serious expression. She wants to make their bond official, not just between them but in front of everyone. She asks him if he's willing to marry her, to always be by her side, and Ivan smiles, saying he'd be honored to make that commitment. Yoo tells her friends about her upcoming second wedding, and they're excited for her. She's deep into the preparations, but this time around, she finds it's going much more smoothly. From picking out decorations to arranging the seating, she's become quite the wedding planning pro. She reminisces about their journey together, how he guided her through the ups and downs of Elysian life, and how their relationship evolved over time. Evian smiles warmly, recalling their shared experiences and the bond they've formed. He expresses his gratitude for being part of her life's journey and looks forward to embarking on this new chapter together as husband and wife. Evian thinks back to when he first met Yoo, how their journey together began in Elysian. He remembers the days of guiding her through this new world, helping her navigate its challenges. Now, as they prepare for their wedding, he realizes how much she's grown and how deeply he cares for her. It's not just about fulfilling his duty as her sponsor anymore, it's about cherishing the bond they've formed over time. Yoo's presence has brought so much joy and meaning into his life, and he's grateful for every moment they've shared together. Yoo pours her heart out to Evian, thanking him for being there for her and making her so happy. She reminisces about their journey together, from the moment they met to now. As they share a tender moment before the wedding, Yoo gently reminds Evian of their last task, to affirm their love for each other before they tie the knot. They share a lingering kiss, and Yoo realizes how much she's been anticipating this day. The next morning, as their wedding day dawns, they're greeted with warm congratulations from friends and family, marking the beginning of their new life together. In Yoo's house, the doctor delivers surprising news: she's carrying an egg. Curious, Yoo asks about the egg's origin, but the doctor can't say for sure. However, he explains that if she can sense manna, she might get a clue about the parent. The egg's color and texture change based on the parent, which could help her identify the father. After feeling the egg, Yoo confidently informs Carl that it's his. She guides his hand to her chest, asking if he can sense it. Carl rests his head on her chest, feeling the bond with his child. Ivan inquires how Carl plans to care for the child, suggesting that the child could be helpful during his deployments. Aspel chimes in, expressing his readiness to assist as well. Ivan firmly disagrees with Aspel's idea, pointing out his youth and lack of experience. Carl suggests the child should stay in the palace, where they'll have ample support. The discussion about childcare responsibilities continues, with everyone sharing their opinions on the matter. Yoo chuckles as she looks at them, feeling her stomach growl. She explains it's because she hasn't eaten since the earlier incident. They all agree she should rest and offer to bring her some food. Curiously, they ask if she's craving anything specific. Yoo wonders how they'll all be like when the child arrives. They all gather around, each taking a turn to feed her small bites. Aspel chimes in, suggesting they hurry with the wedding since it might be hard for her to move once the egg gets bigger. Ivan disagrees, sparking a debate among them. Yoo intervenes, insisting she's fine and attributing her fainting spell to hunger. She explains she didn't eat much earlier because of the dress fitting, which made her feel lightheaded. Aspel and Ivan begin arguing once more, but Carl steps in to calm them down. Yoo watches them, remarking that whatever brings her joy is good for the baby. She finds it amusing to see them like this, all worked up. Yoo is sitting in her studio painting when Leo and Verta, who have grown quite a bit since she last saw them, come in carrying the paint she asked for. She thanks them warmly for their help. As she continues her work, she reflects on how 3 years have flown by, yet she's still focused on caring for the egg, nurturing it with all her love and attention. Having an egg isn't like being pregnant on Earth, there are hardly any physical changes. The 3 men, especially Carl, are overly protective of her. She can't even step out of the house without them making a fuss. Despite living too close to her in-laws, she really likes this place. It feels like home. She spends her days painting and taking care of the egg, surrounded by Leo and Verta, who have grown up into helpful companions. 3 years have flown by, yet her focus remains on raising the egg and preparing for whatever lies ahead. Aspelis recently got a promotion to lieutenant colonel, but he still bickers with Ivan like they're cats and dogs. Carl walks in, saying he has something to talk about, so he gathered them here for a chat. It seems like another one of Carl's serious talks, so they all sit down, curious about what's on his mind. As they all sit together, Carl begins discussing a lengthy mission he's been assigned to in Liesveld. He explains the significance of his presence there and the responsibilities that come with it. Despite the importance of the mission, he assures everyone that he won't neglect his duties as a father and husband. He emphasizes that he wouldn't dream of leaving you in the care of others, especially considering she's carrying his egg, a symbol of their shared future. He expresses his concern for her well-being and safety, highlighting the need for her to have his support and protection. As they discuss, Carl suggests they all accompany him on his mission, emphasizing the importance of his presence. However, they express doubts about being able to join due to their own responsibilities and commitments. Carl then proposes taking only Yoo with him, but Evian and Aspel object, sparking a heated argument about the logistics and risks involved. Yoo intervenes, saying she'd actually like to go, feeling a sense of adventure and excitement about traveling to a new place. She adds that she kind of misses the snow and the thrill of exploring unfamiliar territories. Yoo expresses her excitement about the adventure of traveling to a new place, and they all share in her enthusiasm. They talk about the things they'll do and see, planning the trip together. Yoo reassures them that she'll be fine and promises to make the most of the experience. Carl adds that he'll ensure her comfort throughout the journey, promising to handle everything with care. They all express their love for her, saying Elysian gifted her with the best husband she could ever hope for, and not just one, but 3 incredible partners who care for her deeply. With this beautiful story comes to an end. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps us going. Until next time, ciao.